Hi.
Oh, cool. There it goes. Thanks, Jake.
Good, you're welcome. Nice to see you.
You too. Thanks.
Miss Curtis. Hi, Joe. Carrie. Hi, Curtis.
Hello.
Hi, Carrie.
Hey all.
So we're waiting for Jose. And then we should be good to go.
Good, Christina. Molly's here, so I think did I just see her name? Oh, there you
Yeah.
are. You actually showed up. So we have our student representative. How you doing, Molly?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Good, good, thanks.
So we need Jose. Where's Jose? Curtis, Carrie, and Steve. Oh, there's Jose. Great. Just so you know, Ursula is not coming tonight. I think you guys saw that email. And Julia will arrive around 7. But we're all here, so I think we can get started. I'd like to call the Mount Greylock Regional School District School Committee to order. It's Thursday, October 14th, 2021, and it is 6:01 p.m. We are meeting remotely via Zoom. This meeting will take place virtually pursuant to the law signed by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021, an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which includes an extension until April 1st, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of its March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting will be broadcast on WillieNet TV channel 1302 and posted to the Mount Greylock Regional School District YouTube channel 24 hours after the meeting. At Mount Greylock Regional School District, our mission is to create a community of learners working together in a safe and challenging learning environment that encourages restorative-based processes, respect, inclusive diversity, courtesy, integrity, and responsibility through high expectations and cooperation, resulting in lifelong learning and personal growth. Next up on our agenda is public comment, and I had 2 folks sign up for a public comment today, Ann O'Connor and Susan Abrams. Just a reminder, there's 3 minutes per comment. Please state your name, town, and the agenda item to which you'll be speaking. And if anyone else who's here would like to make public comment while the 2 that I call on next are speaking, you can raise your hand using the reactions raise your hand button. So Ann O'Connor, I'm going to call on you first because I got your request first.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for taking my comment. And I want to preface it by saying, I know what it's like to serve on these committees. I thank you for your work, the many volunteer hours you're putting in. And I know what it's like to have people come to your meetings and be mad at you. But that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm mad. I'm speaking, so I'm Ann O'Connor. I'm from Williamstown, and I'm speaking to item number 8 on your agenda, the discussion of the your next steps on the artificial turf field. I understand there's not a vote tonight, but I thought I would address the concern anyway, because I am concerned about the decision, and I think it's an irresponsible one. Last month, I watched you debate and vote to carry on, like lurch forward with the next steps on this project that has been under discussion for years. I want to say tonight that it is not too late for you to pause, for you to change your minds. It is always an open question, and I would urge each of you to reconsider and ask yourselves why you're so convinced it's the right project for Mount Greylock at this time. We are seeing day to day the effects of the climate crisis. I consider this decision an irresponsible one at this time in the face of the obvious evidence of the climate crisis. I would also add the growing omnipresence of plastics as something that we have to actively work to reduce the amount of plastics in our environment at this time. So I see our children of today being more engaged on climate issues than even many adults. They can see that it's their future that is threatened. It's not that I don't understand why you might, in normal circumstances, have wanted a playing field, an artificial field at Mount Greylock. It's really in the face of the environmental impacts, the known environmental impacts, the carbon footprint of this kind of project that I just don't understand how you can even advance this project now. I feel like there are children in our world who are dying from the effects of the climate crisis, and you are telling our kids that what they need is a huge plastic field. I want to say that many of us have been engaging on this issue for years, and we have consistently talked about organic natural grass, natural turf management as a viable option, and you're as a whole, your committee has never seriously engaged with that. I do want to recognize that even your past votes have been split, so not all of you, and even some of you have taken one position and then switched.
And I apologize, you're at the 3-minute mark.
I think, thanks. I think others will address a few other of my specific points, and I think I've made my sentiments clear, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up on public comment, we have Susan Abrams.
Mute. Sorry about that. Hi there. I want to reiterate what Anne said about your service to the community. And I also, I hope you've all at least seen that I sent a fairly long letter with a lot of research and details about artificial turf fields. And I apologize for making that letter so long. There was so much material that I've been finding about the risks associated with these fields. I am a former Mount Greylock sports parent, so I'm very familiar with the concerns about playability and about people wanting to get out on the fields. But I would also say that our population, the population, at least when my kids, the 15 or so years that I was experiencing the school, was not an unathletic or underactive group of children. So I think that with the very poor field that was there right now, children were getting a lot of outside time, a lot of activity, and with a improved natural grass field, I think that could be better. I don't think it takes an artificial field to do that. I wanted to also remind the committee that this community, Williamstown, made a commitment to net zero carbon equivalent emissions by 2050, which means we need to include that consideration in all of our projects moving forward from starting now. We won't get there unless we start right now, taking that into account. And artificial fields do have a significant contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, whereas a grass field sequesters carbon, even with the mowing and the other care that it requires. It still comes out beneficial to the environment. I've also recently, since your last discussion, discovered that pretty much all of the artificial turf carpets, the grass blades and the backing, because of the way they're made, their extrusion process, they all pretty much have some kind of PFAS material that is needed to help them not stick to the equipment. And I know the measurements of that material once it's made is debatable, but looking at the scientific reports about that, it's pretty clear that every single carpet has some kind of PFAS associated with it, which potentially could leach into our water system and the soil around and into our environment. And I think that we all know from our unfortunate neighbors in Hoosick Falls that that's a pretty serious consideration. The last thing that I think where there has been new development since the last time you guys discussed this was about the rate of injury on fields like this. Both orthopedic, like lower extremity injuries, and concussions. It's hard to tease this out because the old fields were definitely harder, and more importantly, newer fields are definitely better in this regard. But a lot of the comparisons have been made with very compacted and poorly maintained grass fields. So when you really compare the new fields with a really good grass field, what I'm seeing is that there are more concussions and there are more lower extremity ACL, PCL type tears with football, with lacrosse, actually more abrasions with lacrosse, which also raises an issue.
I apologize, Susan, you're over the 3-minute mark.
Okay. So anyways, thank you. I hope you'll be able to read my letter, and thank you very much for this opportunity to share the information. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
all your work.
Thank you, Susan. Stephanie, I see your hand is up.
Am I there? Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm not really prepared. Every month I say I'm finished with artificial turf, but I'm so inspired by my colleagues, Ann and Susan and others who continue to talk about this issue. I've been working with a group of people who are working on developing support for PFAS legislation in Massachusetts. We're trying to get it banned in a number of products. It's amazing how many products include PFAS, from food containers, paper food containers, clothing, carpeting, artificial turf, firefighting equipment. It's ubiquitous and it's terrible. And even if it doesn't contaminate the site at Mount Greylock, which it may very well do, there is contamination where those products are made and where water is polluted, and we will be contributing to that. I just can't see how our community really thinks that this is so important that we are willing to do that. There's no way that we can ask for a field, as Susan said, that doesn't contain PFAS. It's the way they're manufactured. And the United States has been trying to ban PFAS, but there's thousands of those chemicals, and the way that we regulate chemicals in our country is ludicrous. Like, we wait until harm has been caused and then we try to investigate it. Anyway, the new legislation is trying to look at PFAS as a whole class of chemicals rather than one chemical that then some minor molecule gets changed and it's back on the market. The other thing that we've recently done in Williamstown is ban plastic bags, but somehow the school thinks it's okay to put the equivalent of millions of plastic bags on the field. We will not be able to recycle this. I know somebody mentioned at the last school committee meeting that, hey, it must be a good business to recycle these fields. It's not. And recycling markets are a mess, and they're just not. It's so much cheaper for us to make new products that there isn't a market for used products. And we are not going to have any kind of recycling facility that's going to make it a viable option in the near future when it's time to recycle this field. So it will either be incinerated at a waste to energy plant in Pittsfield, or it will be left in a landfill. And I don't know. I wish and hope that you can find a way to not install this field, not send the message to our kids and our community that this is the way that we feel we should deal with the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, I do not see any further public comment. So up next, we have our student representative update, which is Molly Sullivan.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be back. I will just start up with a quick update, a couple updates. Like our sports teams are heading into postseason playoff kind of area time. We have a couple teams who are pretty high seeded, so that's really exciting. The Shakespeare performance and practices are up and running, so it's really great to see them around, and they've been kind of doing a mix of inside and outside, so it's great to see them. A lot of our clubs have been meeting for the first time. There was a book club meeting tonight. Student council is up and running. We have a lot of subcommittees going right now. And I want to thank Mira for coming last time. That was really nice of her to step in. In terms of what you guys talked about with Mira last time, you guys had asked her, well, she had brought up school start time and how that's something that we're kind of looking to pursue this year. And you guys had asked her if we would be talking with other schools about this and seeing what their start time is and what their perspective on it is. And Mount Anthony in Bennington, Vermont had actually reached out last spring to us about kind of just the student council's meeting and talking about all topics. And we kind of, that's last spring had said like, hey, like we're definitely willing to do this, but now it's not the time. We were a little bit flustered with just being back in school, but we're hoping to reach back out to them and meet. And then we're hoping to also reach out to some Berkshire County schools in the coming couple of months to talk about their start times and other things going on. And then we kind of just have our eyes, the student council, our eyes focused forward a little bit. We're looking to do a community service project, which we haven't done in a really long time due to the pandemic. So we've kind of been brainstorming that. But other than that, that's all I have. It's been going really well. And I'd say school has been pretty smooth recently. So thank you guys.
Great, thank you, Molly. Any questions for Molly? Molly, I would look into Dover Sherburne Regional High School because I believe they did a whole thing on on early start times. And I think they have a wealth of information that you guys might be able to go through if you're interested.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, no more questions for Molly. So we're moving on to approval of minutes. And we're starting with August 12th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve the August 12th, 2021 minutes?
Miller, so move.
Miller moves. Do I have a second?
Elfenbein, second.
Elfenbein seconds. Any discussion? Carrie?
So I have two general comments and then a couple of specific comments. My general two comments are that it would be really nice, number one, to standardize the way we use names in minutes. First name, initial, period, last name, and just leave it at that. It's all over the board and it's really disconcerting that sometimes Mr. Pratt is Nolan and sometimes he's Dr. Pratt and sometimes he's Pratt, and just as an example. So I just find it unsettling when I'm reading the minutes that there is no standardization, and that's through all the sets of minutes. The second is that this is, and I'm going to channel Julia here, but this reads more like a transcript than a set of minutes. And I know we've had this conversation multiple times in school committee where if there is a recording, this should be a general summary and not a line item detail of everything that went on in the meeting. So I'm going to leave it at that for that particular comment. So then on page 4, at the bottom, the the last paragraph, over 24 credit in-person students were taught by Mount Greylock staff and America and the world. I don't know what that last reference is, and America and the world.
I am not sure either, Carrie. We'll try to track that down if that was part of the summer
Okay.
school conversation and the name of a course maybe that was offered during the summer program, but we'll try to track that down. Jake, I don't know if you have any insight.
I was just going to say America in the World is our U.S. history course.
Right.
I don't know the contents in which it was used here, but that's what it is. Or the content
Okay.
in which it was
Maybe someone needs to go back to the video and see why that's there in that way. So page 5, the end of the first paragraph, the very beginning of the second, MG, Mount Greylock, maybe we should refer to Mount Greylock as the district across the board. Again, standardizing how we reference the district would be really helpful. So people aren't trying to, I mean, I'm thinking if someone comes to these minutes a couple of years, 5 years from now, it would just be helpful if there were some system. Page 6 to 7, I think it might be helpful to remove a part of a sentence that just doesn't make sense. I know what it was because I think I said it, but the way it's written here doesn't make a lot of sense. So viewers were reminded that the J policies on the website are the policies that would be pertinent to this conversation. And then I think this part can just be removed, as there was work done during full regional process to make J policies relevant pre-K to grade 12. I don't think it was that they were made relevant. I think they were made, I don't know what they were. They were revised. They were, Joe, do you remember? I mean,
maybe just say that they ensured coverage of all. I mean, I would probably be too wordy. I would say they covered all the needs of a pre-K through 12 school district.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that phrase could just be removed or it could be revised, but it doesn't sit right the way it is. Page 9 at the very top. I know Jake used the opportunity to announce that Lindsay was named the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association Board President, but that's not her actual title when it comes to these minutes. Her title is, Director of Athletics and Co-Curricular, so that should be changed. Page 10. The very middle of the page regarding face coverings, the last acronym is MEA. It should be MGEA, I believe, MGEA. I don't know if you want me to go on, Christina, or if I should just.
What I'm wondering is, because I think we generally accepted in our last discussion about minutes that the minute should be more of minutes rather than a transcript. Do we need to go through these line by line because if these were written differently?
Well, we've already rejected these once. So I think it would be good to approve them so that there is a written record of the meeting. Moving forward, we do have a set of minutes that is also more of a transcript. So those are the minutes from September 9th. So if we want to reject those, we could do that.
Okay. So would it make sense to accept this motion with changes, and you can provide any additional detailed changes?
Sure, I'll provide them to the superintendent. And okay. Yep, but you get the gist of what I'm right going for.
So I will just ask Steve and Curtis if they are okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Great, thank you. So we have a motion to approve August 12th, 2021 minutes with changes by Miller, seconded by Elfenbein. We've had our discussion. All in favor? Conry, I have to go first.
Right.
Green eye. Oh, Curtis, sorry, go ahead.
Constant. Curtis, you have a question? Sorry.
No, I don't. I
No.
was like, it's Jose first. Jose, go ahead.
It's been so long, you gotta remember the order again.
Yep.
All right, Constantine, I.
Elfenbein eye.
Green eye.
Miller, I.
Okay, great. Those minutes, that motion is passed. Moving on to August 24th, 2021 special session. Do I have a motion to approve the August 24th, 2021 special session minutes?
Miller, so move.
Miller moves. Do I have a second? Elfenbein seconds. Discussion. Carrie.
Yeah, so I would just say the same thing, that moving forward, maybe we could standardize the names to first name, initial, and last name. So it'd be like C, Green, and E, or what, you get the idea. My only my substantive comment is on page 4 at the very bottom. Accepted as a friendly amendment. I think I learned in an MASC workshop that there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. Like an amendment is just an amendment. So we could just strike the word friendly.
Okay.
So if somebody does not accept the amendment,
They just, then
the school
they don't
committee
accept
can't,
it.
the rest of the committee cannot override and accept that to the original motion. It has to
Right,
be,
I think you'd have to vote down the whole motion.
you'd have to
and
vote down the
then-
whole motion. And
Mhm.
then,
someone else could amend it and then move it as amended, kind of thing. Yeah.
you'd have to just move it anew because you
Mhm.
voted it down, and then you can just move it with that already incorporated.
Yep.
So I just went online, it says in parliamentary procedure, a friendly amendment is an amendment to a motion under debate that is perceived by all parties as an enhancement to the original motion, often only as clarification of intent. So, I'm
Okay, yeah, so then maybe maybe it's not specifically Robert's rules. We'd have to look that up.
right.
But does have a meaning outside of
Right,
that.
the meaning is that there doesn't seem to be anybody present who's opposing to, and it's more than just the person who I guess is
Right.
the original shaker and mover.
So the thing is that we don't take, I see. So it's an amendment that isn't voted on, essentially. So now we're getting into the weeds of it. But if you move a motion and then there's an amendment to it, you technically should vote on the amendment. And we don't do that because unless there's like a dispute over the amendment.
And that's the whole point of the amendment.
That's the whole point of the friendly amendment. There's no vote. Okay,
Right.
okay,
So we're keeping the friendly amendment.
sure.
Okay. So I have a motion moved by Steve, seconded by Curtis. Any further discussion? All in favor? Conry, aye.
Constantine, I.
Elfenbein eye.
Green eye.
Miller, I.
Okay, that motion passes. Do I have a motion to approve the August 28th, 2021 workshop?
Miller, so move.
Okay, Miller moves.
Elfenbein second.
Elfenbein seconds. Any discussion?
I just had a question. It says that the slides will be shared. Were the slides shared from the workshop? Did
Yes,
we ever get them?
we
Yeah.
did. Yeah. We did receive them from Stacy. I can forward those again to you.
Okay, no, if they're there, they're somewhere back in the emails. I just didn't see it. Thank you.
You're
Are they
welcome.
are they posted on the district page under the meeting packet?
I don't know. I didn't look there.
I'm checking right now. What was the date of this?
28th August.
Okay. Workshop with MASC. right, so I see some slides there. I'm trying to see if I'm trying to see if everything is there. My internet connection is slow. Doesn't look like it doesn't look like everything is there. So it would be good to add that to the meeting documents online.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All in favor? Conry, aye.
Constantine, I.
Elfenbein, aye.
Green eye.
Miller, aye.
Okay, that motion-
It actually might be there. I did see something saying evaluating the superintendent. So that is there. So maybe the stuff is all there.
Great. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the September 9th, 2021 minutes?
I'm going for the clean sweep. Miller,
Okay,
aye.
Miller moves, Elfenbein seconds.
5 seconds.
Any discussion?
So I'm gonna suggest that we reject these minutes based on the fact that they're not the format that we're looking for and that Julia has been advocating for in terms of summary of discussion rather than every detail.
Okay,
But that's just my opinion. If I do have edits to them, so if the committee passes them, I will pass along my edits to the superintendent.
any, Jose?
I'm going back and forth between the cartoon hand and the real hand. Yeah, I agree with Carrie, but there's an exception that the meetings that we had before us for September 9th are more functional, or at least more functionally effective, I should say, than the previous and edited meeting minutes from August 12th, I believe. So I think my concern is if this goes back for editing, will we get what we just received as edits? Like, I guess I'm confused about what's going on in the process, or what is going on wrong in the process of editing meeting minutes.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Jose, and say we do have a new person who is the minute taker, and it is very complex work. And I think she is working hard to try to get the committee what they want, and we refine it a little bit every meeting. And then Stacy jumps in and has a heavy hand in some of this re-editing to get things a little more to the form that you want. Because she's full-time and the person that actually does the minutes is very part-time.
Got it. Thanks, Jake. I mean, in that regard, I mean, given that, well, they seem functionally effective and informative, at least more so than minutes that we just approved. I would argue or welcome a vote to approve these meeting minutes, and then to accept the amendments that Carrie will recommend to us, hopefully.
So I would support that. I'm different than most people. I actually like the detailed minutes. I think a lot of this is not so much of a discussion, but there are huge parts of this that are just enumerating facts. There are other parts that could be trimmed. And I would just say I would support these minutes and then just tell the minute writers in the future that they can condense them a little bit further. But this is a nice, this is a good, easy summary. And there were a lot of points of substance that we did discuss.
Carrie, Curtis, are you okay with that? Okay, so we have a motion from Steve, seconded by Curtis. And we will Carrie will send her edits out. So all in favor? Conry, aye.
Constantine, I.
Elfenbein, I.
Green eye.
Miller, I.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to principal updates. We have Lanesboro Elementary up first.
Good evening, everyone. I am a single dog parent this morning, so if my dogs interrupt, I am sorry. They've been pretty quiet so far, so hopefully they keep up the trend. So I have two pieces for you tonight. I have an update for the school, like what's going on at Lanesboro Elementary, and I have a brief MCAS update. So at Lanesboro right now, we have a Wyvern Week coming up. If you do not know what a wyvern is, it is the school mascot. You will also see them in Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has it wrong. They are not dragons, they are wyverns. And each class does a small project. The art class a couple years ago, if you ever walk into Lanesboro, there's a huge color wyvern right on the wall right as you walk in. That was done by the art class 2 years ago. There's coats of arms, there's coloring. It's just a great way to build school camaraderie and to reinforce our principles of what it means to be at Lanesboro Elementary. Next, we have a grade 4 split happening. We have 24 students in our grade 4 class, and a lot of move-ins over the summer really tipped the flow of the need of the class. So we're going to break it into 2 groups of 12. The interview committee has met, and we have started the process of bringing in a new 4th grade teacher. Field trips to Hopkins Forest. We have 3 classes going to Hopkins Forest. The science curriculum at Hopkins Forest that it offers with the Williams College is great. So we're excited to have students get out of the building for an academic experience for the first time in a really long time. Upcoming events, we have the pumpkin contest. So students carve, paint pumpkins. They bring them in on October 27th. They sit in the main lobby, and then at the end of the week, they go home. They're judged. They get awards for most creative, best, et cetera, et cetera. On October 30th, the PTO is doing a trunk or treat from, I think it's 3 to 4. It is people decorate their trunks. They hand out candy. It's just a really cool event that the PTO does. And then last 2 pieces, we've had 8 Wyverns of the week so far. So we've had 8 students of recognition for being just academic excellence and a good friend. And then conferences are coming up on November 4th and November 5th. The 4th is 4:30 to 7:30, and the 5th is 1 to 4 p.m. Before I dive into the MCAS data, what questions do you have for me on this first part? I can't see everyone.
Nolan, this is Carrie. Sorry, did you say that the grade 4 split was so that there would be 12 students in each of 2 classes?
Yeah, so the break is from 24 to 12. The need of that group is significant. So being able to break it down into 2 groups is really going to allow these students to be successful.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? I can only see Jake, Christina, and Jose. All right, I'll move on. So the MCAS last year, we kind of aimed to do 2 things. One, just have the students successfully take the MCAS. Given the circumstances of last year, everything that the students went through, having them prepared and ready to take the MCAS was one of the goals we had. And that being said, we had all but 2 students participate in the MCAS. The remote piece of it all was another monster that students had to conquer, which they did. So the fact that teachers and students came together and got this done was amazing. And the second piece was to determine the gaps in learning that were caused by the disruption of last school year and the previous school year. So to really look at what happened, I'm going to use 2019 versus 2021. So it's a 2-year gap. It shows the trends. One thing that is important to notice that if you look at our current grade 5 class, each student is about worth 4% on that graph. So 2 students could swing that graph completely in a different direction. But I do think if you look at the grade 5 ELA graph, That's kind of what we want it to look like. Very little red, if not no red, a little bit of yellow, mostly green and blue. And that's what we aim to do with each group. So with that, that's why I looked at the data. I also did an item analysis to really see the specific gaps that we missed, but we do not have time to get into each and every single question that we missed. However, I will gladly go over it one-on-one with anyone who wants to. So here's how we did. We're a school of recognition. So we had a great growth for our students, and it's just awesome. This is, I think the second year that we've had School of Recognition in my time at Lanesboro, so it's just great. Our grade 3 and our grade 3 ELA and math, they had no students. They did great. I think they had only one student in the red. Grade 4 ELA had no students in the red, which is really what we aim to do. And grade 6 had math and no students in the red, which is our main goal going into the MCAS, is get all of our students to partially meeting or better. Obviously, we want every student to be exceeding expectations, but getting them to pass is also a great goal for us. So areas where we need to grow. We need to minimize our not meeting expectation numbers back to what they were on in previous, 2019. We had a little bit of a bump last year. Fractions. In the item analysis that we did, the majority of the math questions that we missed were based on fractions, ratios, and division. And the majority of the ELA questions that we missed on were on drawing inferences from the text. So the good news is we already have some things in place to mitigate these gaps. Our new ELA curriculum is comprehension first, which is going to really help make inferences from the text that they're reading, the images that they see. I was in a class the other day and they were talking about inferences already this early in the school year. So I think that's really going to help close that gap. We are piloting this year data meetings with grades kindergarten 3 and 6. So we're looking at student work to really be make real-time decisions on how we can adjust our practice to make sure students are learning. And lastly, we're utilizing the benchmark, FastBridge benchmark, which is a way to get a snapshot of each student on each individual standard, what they have mastered, what they need help on, and what they've completely missed. One thing I should mention is the subgroups, students that are economically disadvantaged, students of color. We have a hard time, the numbers are so few that the state does not give us a report on that. However, I know how our students that are students with disabilities, students of color, and economically disadvantaged, they all were with their peers in performance. However, the state does not give us those numbers because they don't report on subgroups less than 10, if that makes sense. So what questions do you have for me? Jose.
Oh, thanks, Nolan. I was on the, I don't know if you could reshare your screen and just looking at the grade breakdown. And I can't recall whether it was 5th or 6th grade. I was just curious about the grade by grade. Well, let's go back before I muddle this question further. There was like the bar charts. I think this is the one. That's
this
right.
is a lot to look at. So
that's right. And do you have a sense from these data? I mean, because looking at it, one might be worried about, how our 6th graders coped and were able to maintain learning through the pandemic. Looking at, how the bars have shifted from 2019 to 2021. You could argue, that it's maybe, that the 5th graders, coped or responded better. But is there any concern when you look at it from grade to grade that individual cohorts, there's differences between grade cohorts in terms of not just their response or their how well they achieved or performed in the MCAS, but but also how well they coped during the pandemic in terms of learning loss.
So if I think I'm hearing the question is how did each grade differ compared to other grades?
Yeah, and maybe more importantly, I think for me is, do you have any concerns about how individual grade cohorts, about how each of them not just performed in the MCAS, but how differences in learning loss for these individual cohorts?
So I think going into looking at this data, I was expecting to see just like the Grand Canyon of gaps, all like just everywhere, and it's really just potholes. For instance, like I was talking with a teacher the other day. Students were doing great, like 4-digit multiplication, but they didn't know where to put the commas, so they had to go back and reteach all the comma lessons. So it's a hard comparison to make grade level to grade level because each little pothole is different at that grade level, if that makes sense. But it's not as expansive as we thought it would be.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's all reassuring, and I think and especially you and your staff and the teachers, the fact that you can pinpoint where those shortcomings occurred and can address them effectively, I think is good news to hear, going forward. It's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think I saw Steve's hand up.
No, he basically asked the question I was going to ask.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Nolan. And now my dog is misbehaving, so I do apologize for that. Next up, we have Williamstown Elementary.
Good evening, everyone. I am definitely going to get into information specifically about school and what's happening in MCAS, but I definitely wanted to take a moment tonight at the start of my presentation to share the news that many of you are already aware of. But last Monday night, we lost one of our 6th grade students, Tristan Lawson. Tristan was diagnosed with cancer in his brainstem in May of 2020 and was undergoing treatment up until the time that he passed away. Tristan was a triplet who leaves behind his 2 6th grade siblings at our school, as well as a senior sister at Mount Greylock. And I ask you all to continue to keep this family and these children in your hearts as they navigate this really difficult time. I am incredibly proud of the staff and the students at the school. Our students are really struggling with this and have been able to really grieve together, but also to remember Tristan and tell stories and all of the best pieces of him. And I know that in the 6th grade, the 6th graders have definitely, basically made an edict to all of us that, they are going to continue to have Tristan's desk stay in the 6th grade classroom, but that Tristan will also be someone that graduates. They will have a spot for him at 6th grade graduation. And this is a student that was loved by all, and we are definitely feeling the loss of, a valued member of our school community. And I just ask all of you to truly continue to keep them in your hearts and in your minds, because I can't imagine, and my heart goes out to them. It seems a little difficult to make the transition into now talking about the school and MCAS, but I also recognize that's, another piece of what we do. In our school right now, we are looking forward to bringing back Words Are Wonderful this upcoming school week. We weren't allowed to do it last year just due to all of the COVID restrictions. So I'm grateful that we're going to continue to try and forge ahead and continue to try and bring back something a little bit more normal, bring back a little bit more fun, through this program. And what that will look like is we have 2 authors who will be visiting us via Zoom next week, Robbie Bear and Matthew Swanson. They will be presenting to our pre-K through 6 students, and then they will follow up with some individual grade levels on doing, work studies with 2 particular grades. We will have a character parade on Wednesday, and we will also are going to try and do a COVID-friendly book fair from Wednesday through Friday within our school. And it's something, we're really looking forward to continue to bring back the programs that we really hold dear to us, and to try and do them as safely as we possibly can. So that's something, I'm grateful to the PTO, especially Geraldine Shen and Carrie Honecker, who have really championed this Words Are Wonderful program and trying to do the best on bringing it to the school, making every adjustment possible to have it, have the normal things, the quote normal things brought to us, because it definitely takes a lot of work and a lot of planning. And I'm so grateful that we have a community that's willing to continue to work with me and with the rest of the staff to infuse these things back into our curriculum and back into our normal school year. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to dive into all things MCAS. And very similar, I'm going to obviously go through slides fairly quickly. The good news about the MCAS graphics are that they are self-explanatory past this first screen as far as looking carefully, at the colors that you're about to see. So I'm going to kind of go through quickly, but when you're looking at the different grade levels, the data on the left is Williamstown Elementary School. The data on the right is the information compared to the state. So at a very cursory glance, you are looking at blue being students who are exceeding expectations, green students who are meeting, yellow being partially meeting, and red meaning students who are not meeting expectations. At first glance, you'll notice in third grade in language arts, students did really well. We didn't have any students who were not meeting expectations, which we're pretty happy about. Similarly, third grade math, again, at a cursory glance, you're looking at the colors that we had a tremendous amount of students who were either exceeding or meeting in the third grade math, which is great. Fourth grade language arts, also very similarly. You'll notice that this one especially, what was really good to see was the number of students meeting expectations compared to the state. And I will say fourth grade, from a level of just curriculum in general, our students are really transitioning from learning to read to reading to learn. And so the content and the things that they're expected to do at a fourth grade level are much different than what you would see in a younger grade. So we're pretty proud of our students in the middle of a pandemic, being able to attack this test and, come out with results like what we're seeing. Fourth grade math, you'll notice what stood out to me and stood out to staff members was both, we have kind of a stagnant, area of colors with meeting expectations and partially meeting. This does not surprise us. We are continuing to look at our math programming. We are looking at all things curriculum. This year happened to be the infusion of a new language arts curriculum, but that does not mean that we are not at all focused on math. It means that we completely recognize that we will be looking at new math curriculums down the road. We just know that we can't do everything at once and want to be able to focus fully on language arts and adopting a new curriculum before we head into math. But this is an area we know that we want to be supporting our students in based upon the data from the MCAS. Grade 5 language arts, again, we saw good results compared to the state as well. Exceeding expectations and meeting we're really proud of. The number of students who were not meeting expectations, I think, is worth mentioning. There are upper grade students. We have a lot of students with a variety of different learning needs, and based upon what they were asked to do, we're pretty proud of, that students were able to do as well as they did. Grade 5 math, again, big gains as far as students that were meeting expectations, which we're always happy to see. Science, if you've ever seen the science MCAS, I feel like science is probably the most challenging as far as in terms of MCAS and what students are expected to recall and remember throughout the school year. But our students still, despite the myriad of learning models that we did all through the year, our students did pretty well. You'll notice here that we had 13, that were not meeting expectations. And again, it's something that it's an area that we are aware of and an area that we are going to continue to try and bolster our curriculum and our interventions that we need to make sure all of our students are, getting what they need to succeed and to access the curriculum. Our sixth graders, big jump here. You'll notice we had a lot of students exceeding expectations, which is amazing. Again, given what these children were put through last year, to see this is pretty great. This would have been the group of students that we sent along to MG. So we're pretty happy with where their data came out. Similarly with math, and this was an area we had a lot of students who were meeting expectations, but also a lot of students who were exceeding. And again, looking at the conditions at which, they were working in throughout last school year, to see them have this kind of data is something that we're really proud of. Big themes across the board. I know the big pressing question is what gaps do we see and how does this compare to other years and what are we going to do? And I have to be honest, it's really difficult to take a look at this MCAS data and compare it to anything for a myriad of reasons, not just that we were in the middle of a pandemic, not just that learning models were very different, but this MCAS also looked very different than in previous years. This MCAS was an abbreviated version. And so it's kind of comparing very, very different things. What I will say is, despite it being abbreviated, despite it being a different type of MCAS, we're still seeing very similar trends. And what does that tell us? What we're really looking for is we're examining all of our system of supports. We're looking at our tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, but we're also looking at our tier 1. Do we have general education curriculum that we are giving to all students and providing access to a curriculum that's meeting all of our students' needs, not just our students who might need additional interventions in reading and in math? That's ongoing work that has been happening for the last 2 to 3 years, but it's something that we are going to continue to make sure that we are truly meeting the needs of every student in our building. Something new, especially to Williamstown Elementary, is we do have a math interventionist. And the math interventionist actually started at the beginning of last year. So she, worked and then went into the pandemic. And so it's been great to watch her be able to really grow this program that we've never had before. That's something we're looking forward to seeing growth from kindergarten through 6th grade. But she's not also just the interventionist for students who need assistance. She's also providing enrichment to students who also need that end of the spectrum as well. Because again, ultimate goal, no matter what we're doing, is to make sure that we're meeting the needs of everyone, not just one particular group of students. Similar to what you heard with Nolan, we are using FastBridge as a new assessment tool. We're definitely muddling our way through that a little bit. It's new to us. We know that we are going to learn a lot as we go along with the reports and what we're seeing, but it's something that we feel like is going to be a good assessment tool that we can use with our reading interventionists, with our math interventionists, but also with our classroom teachers to give them a really clear picture of different student strengths and weaknesses throughout the school year. As I mentioned, Wit and Wisdom is our new English language arts curriculum. I will say our teachers have really taken a new curriculum on by storm. It has not been easy. It has not been quick, and it has not been something that has not taken them hours and hours of planning every single day. And I'm grateful that they are willing to stick it out, because it's really hard in the situation that we're in to try and do something completely different than what you're used to. Similarly to that, the whole basis of it is that we really were looking for consistent programming and common language. We've not had a consistent language arts program that ran from kindergarten through 6th grade. The ultimate goal is for children to be exposed to language and a system when they're really young, and that's something that's built on every single year, where it's not a new teacher and a new grade level starting something new. And we're looking forward to seeing what that data and that growth looks like across the next several years. Similarly, we were able to do foundations at grades K through 3 to really enhance that language arts curriculum, and also Heggerty, which is a program that focuses on phonemic awareness for our grades K and 1. All 3 of these programs really work in tandem with each other to address the 5 components of reading instruction that we want all of our students who are going through kindergarten through 6th grade to have. And lastly, as I mentioned, I want to make sure people realize we still have that negative wanting a new math curriculum and examining what's best for our students. And that's something that we're hoping that we can continue to look at. And when would we be able to, have a committee get together and be able to start looking at programs? We know that it's not this year or next year, because again, we want to bring in a language arts curriculum, work with it to fidelity, but also put in the time necessary without trying to throw in something new for our teachers. That's important, to give our teachers the time to be able to work with one thing before we throw in the next thing. But, you know, ultimately, the gaps are consistent with what we've seen before. Am I worried about our kids? Yes, but I'm worried about our kids' social emotional skills and our social emotional gaps more than I'm worried about any gap that the MCAS graphs have told me. We're going to be able to, as I've said before in previous meetings, finding the gaps is what we're good at. Assessing where kids are is what we're good at. And people are masterful at that. And that's what we're going to continue to do for the entire rest of this school year and for 20 years after this year, because that's what we need to do to make sure every kid in our school is being successful. Any questions? Steve?
Yes, so thank you for the presentation, but I first wanted to just add a few brief words on Tristan. I was fortunate enough to know him and the family for quite a while. He was a remarkable kid with lessons for us all. Too often we focus on all the problems and all the places where we come up short. Tristan showed us how high we can reach. He never complained and he never stopped fighting. I'm a math professor at Williams, and in 2 decades of teaching our nation's finest, I've really seen anybody who's had such a desire to learn as he did. And it was, you know, truly, truly inspirational to know him. And so going forward, each semester, I'm going to give an award in his name to my student who best exemplifies this passion for learning, for fighting to seize opportunities. I also wanted to just, you know, follow up on what you said, that it was so moving at his service to hear the efforts of his classmates to preserve his memory. They showed the best of our schools, and I thank them. I thank the teachers. I thank everyone for what they are doing. And I look forward to working with the districts to find additional fitting tributes.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions? Jose.
Thanks, Cindy. I've got a cartoon hand up and a real hand up. Let me get the cartoon hand down. Yeah, I'm just gonna. I've got a question, a tough question to pose, I think, to you and to Jake. But what I'd like to first say is seconding Stephen. You know, as a parent of a 6th grader, I am so grateful for your leadership, your compassion, Cindy, as our principal at Williamstown Elementary, and for your staff and teachers. You know, I think I'm sure this process will continue, certainly through this year, and hopefully as we remember Tristan for many years to come. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate the space that you gave our students this past week. The question I have is one that is in response to what seems to be a step change in the number of racist incidents that are afflicting our children in Williamstown. You know, they seem to be occurring on a near weekly basis, either at the elementary school or the youth center. And that is no reflection of the school district. That, I think, is instead a reflection of the wider values and culture of Williamstown. But as the town continues to diversify, I think there's fear and concern of families of color that these incidents are just going to continue occurring, which leads to the sincere and real need for professional development to support our teachers. It was, in the incident that occurred in the 2nd grade cohort, the parents brought news to us that the imperfect, I think we could acknowledge, response by incredibly difficult, in a difficult circumstance, the response by some of our staff at Williamstown Elementary may have placed students of color, or this particular student of color, in a compromising position. And so the question I have, I think, for you, Cindy, and for Jake, is as we move forward, and I think we can sadly expect more of these incidents to occur, what are we doing in terms of helping prepare our teachers for those next incidents so that we can better support not just them, but I think most importantly, the students of color who are having to deal with this firsthand? So,
Jose, definitely a great question. And I will say, we all have a lot of work to do. And what I will say is that one of the great things about elementary school is we have this incredible opportunity with the youngest students in the district to make an impact and to be teaching and giving knowledge and giving children experiences and room to have these discussions. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I've been working with Dr. Joshi, had a phone call with her this week because my assistant principal, Travis, and I have been talking about, what do we do? How do we make a difference? Where do we start? And we are going to be going into classrooms and reading stories to the children to really start to have discussions with our children. But part of that, the secondary part of that is preparing our staff and that professional development around our staff having conversations with students in the moment when something happens. And, and speaking with Dr. Joshi, she is going to be coming to a staff meeting in about 2 weeks. And the goal is to be able to talk about this very thing. What happens if a situation comes up? And there's going to be role playing so that teachers have the opportunity to be able to talk something out, to be able to navigate a situation, because that's what we want to be able to give kids the space. We want to be able to give staff the space, but we all know that it also takes training and it takes having someone lead us and guide us through that. And so our first step is going to be this meeting with Dr. Joshi, where she's going to be leading us staff-wide through a variety of scenarios where every single teacher will be able to do that role playing with her guidance so that it's a starting point. It's something kind of like what you said. Do I think that this is an isolated incident? No, but we have to start somewhere. And this feels like a good place to start to be able to empower our teachers to have difficult conversations. But that, the other piece of that is we have to be able to give our students knowledge, and we have to be able to talk to our students about differences and what that looks like, because they are little and they have the opportunity to learn and hear different things. And that's our job. And that's what we're going to hopefully continue to do.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jose, I'll jump in just briefly from a district level. All of the things that Cindy said, one of the things we hear consistently from our faculty and our staff is there is a general lack of knowing exactly how to respond appropriately. And there is some concern about stepping in and saying the wrong thing and making the situation worse for a child or making the situation worse for the school. That's one of the reasons we entered into really a lengthy relationship with Dr. Joshi. It's one of the reasons we did the work that we're going to hear about on October 19th. Yeah, I will say our work with Dr. Joshi is certainly, and I've been doing this for a long time, but I am continuing to learn how, starting with my part of the organizational chart, how some of the things I do are less than helpful. And that certainly then extends through the rest of the organizational chart, and how from our office on through the district, we can all do better. We can all communicate better messages in more appropriate ways, and we can support our students and our families by supporting our staff to be better responders, and by helping our students learn that there are different ways of operating among one another than to be this way. If there is any, I think there's two pieces to be really optimistic about. One, my assumption based on my experience, both as just a person and a neighbor and a friend and a resident in Pittsfield and as a leader in Pittsfield and now here, is that these incidents do occur in the lives of some people daily. Part of our work, a vital part of our work, is establishing enough trust and lines of communication that those of us with power to do something are actually hearing about them and moving to do something. So that's good news. The other good news is we had, when you count teachers, paraprofessionals, and administrators, we had 60 people from this district with about 254 employees. We had 60 of them spending serious, significant time with Dr. Joshi over the summer, doing this work, having the difficult conversations. She'll be back later in the month, and you all will be spending some time with her and getting some insights into who she is, what she's about, and what she's doing with us and for us. And so we keep working on it, but really, I think we're starting with all of this work starts with recognizing our own biases and the things we see, the things we don't see, the things we think, the things we don't think. But that immediate response and then follow-up response and communication is really where we're putting our efforts right now, because we know our community expects it and our community deserves it. So thank you for giving us the chance to talk about that.
No, thank you, Jake. And thank you, Cindy, for your leadership and work on this.
Any further questions for Cindy? Okay, so moving on to the Mount Greylock Regional School Principal update.
Good evening, everybody. So I have a little slideshow that I'll go over too. First, I just want to say thanks to Molly. She did a great job. Welcome. I know she had a stand-in last time who did great for her, but moving forward, most of the time you're going to be seeing Molly as the student representative. So before we get to the slideshow, a couple notes on MCAS. Our accountability classification is substantial progress towards our target. So this is where the state puts schools in two boxes. One box that needs intervention, and then the other box is schools that are making progress but need varying degrees of support. And they use progress towards the targets, accountability percentiles, graduation rates, and assessment participation rates to determine what classification you go into. And substantial progress towards target is a decent place to be. Overall, you'll see we have a great participation rate. This fall, we only have one student taking a retake and one student doing a makeup. We also have several students this year, seniors, that are participating in this year's November retake in order to contend for the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship Award. So now I will share my screen. Here, oh. Here we go. Presentation mode. I am not a Google guy, so I'm just going to leave it in this mode. So here you see the two categories I was talking about and where we fall in the substantial progress towards targets. And
right now, I'm still just seeing a drive.
Yeah, Jake, we're just seeing your drive home screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to pull it up and share it from mine, and you just tell me when to advance?
Yeah, sure, if you don't mind, Jake.
No, I'm happy to, of course. Yep, just give me 1 second.
I'm just happy I'm not on my phone tonight and actually able to use a laptop.
That's probably the best I'm going to be able to do, is to show the PDF, and you just tell me when to move.
That's okay, Jake. Perfect.
Do you want to zoom in a bit?
Yep.
So you can go to the next slide.
Steve, I'm gonna struggle. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go to the next slide and then I'll try that.
Well, if you want, I can. If I have.
You're going to go to the grade 7. And so these Can you go to the grade 7?
Yep, just give me 1 second. I'm gonna
Well,
open this
do
in a
you
different.
want me?
Recording in progress.
Hold on.
You want me to share? If you give me permission, I can share from my computer.
Yeah, you should have permission, Steve. Go ahead and try. I'll stop mine.
Okay.
Apologies to everyone on the committee and watching this. Thank you, Steve.
Okay. You're welcome.
All right, if you want to go to the 4th slide, Steve.
Yep.
Right there. So we have 3 grades taking the MCAS, the 7th, the 8th, and the 10th. And these basic graphs, much like Cindy's, compare the school averages to the state averages. And you'll see on average, our scores of exceeding and meeting standards are above the state average, and our scores of partially meeting or not meeting are lower than the state standards. So overall, that's a good thing. So you'll see in math, this is as far as the meeting standards, this is the one area where we're the closest, but the rest we're definitely above the state. So if you go to the next, we have 7th grade math. Moving on to the 8th, and again, I'll go through these pretty fast. So if you go 2 slides forward, Steve, 8th grade ELA, you'll see the green and the blue on the left are higher than the green and the blue on the right, and the yellow and the red are lower for the ELA. And this is 8th grade, and if you go to the next is math. And for the 10th grade, so if we go next 2 slides, 10th grade is what students take that they need to pass for graduation. So all of our students graduated last year. However, there were modified certificates of
Competency.
CDs, modified CDs. What's the D stand for, Jake?
It's a certification of competency. It's
anyways,
competency determination.
Yeah. Drawing a
There
blank
you
on
go.
it, what is the competency? And so anyways, it was modified. So as long as students did not have to pass, the senior class last year did not have to pass MCAS in order to graduate. Although most of our students did, it wasn't a requirement. So 10th grade ELA, here's 10th grade math. So these scores, we just got the hard copies in from the state. They're being processed and prepared to be mailed home. They're sent home via regular mail with students, or regular mail to students' homes. Also, any students who struggled, who either did not meet, we only had 1 student that did not meet, and any students who score in a certain percentage of the partially meeting, they meet with their school counselors, and they develop plans to make sure that they're prepared for their retest. And so those meetings have already started to take place. More specifically, where the real work is done is on the department level. So departments have already had 1 department meeting to take time and to do an item analysis like Nolan mentioned. So oftentimes there are very specific themes. So we do pretty well. That's one reason why we're at substantial progress towards goal and not exceeding standards, because when you do well, it's that much harder to show growth. So we really get into the weeds when we do this item analysis to see where we need to focus and where we need to do any remediation, and we do both. Teachers assess these questions and see what they taught or what they how much time they spent on certain concepts, and where students did well and where they didn't do well, and they cross level that and to see where they need to spend more specific time. On the other side, with the guidance counselors, we see if there's any certain students that did that didn't do as well, that doesn't really fit the themes of the item analysis, and those students get more specific remediate or more general remediation in the form of skills classes or tutoring. Just a plug for our tutoring, we have more tutors, more Williams Fellows tutoring, and more Mount Greylock students participating in tutoring this year than we've had in many years. So that's a great thing too. So any questions on MCAS? And I can only see Christina and Jake.
I've got a question, Jake.
Yes, sir.
And this is probably a question for all of our principals, including our elder statesman, Jake. But in terms of what success looks like when we're looking at these numbers, it's certainly great to see the number of students, or these high percentages of students, who are exceeding and meeting expectations. The students that I am curious about are the students who are considered not to be meeting expectations. And I'm wondering, what happens to those students as they leave sixth grade? And I'm only recalling the graph that Cindy had showed us. And there's a significant percentage of students who were not meeting expectations in sixth grade who then go on to seventh. I assume Lanesboro Elementary is a similar pattern. What, in terms of process, what happens next, and how do we work to making that number as close to zero as possible by the time they graduate?
Well, I can tell you from, I know you mentioned sixth grade, but from a high school perspective, we take that student, and depending on where they are in their course of study and what their areas of difficulty or success are, they have a couple options of when they can take that retest. They could take it, say if there was a significant life event last spring when they were taking this, it might make sense for them to take the retest right in November, because they were just not mentally available to participate. Or if they were behind a year in mathematics for some reason, because there was other priorities that we were focusing on in their 7th, 8th, and 9th grade year. Maybe they take the retest at the end of their 11th grade year after another year of additional mathematics. So it all is very individually tailored for the 10th grade student, but I really can't speak to the
right. So one way to frame it is that the score is a reflection of the time that a student took the test. I think I'm worried about when those scores reflect real learning challenges or learning hurdles that students might be facing, that they actually do reflect a student who is not performing or who hasn't learned to a standard set by the state. So for those students for whom there are serious challenges as they enter the middle school, high school, and as they progress through the middle school, high school, can we say with confidence that we have a process in place that helps those students overcome and the challenges that they might be facing?
Definitely. So kind of like what Cindy said, is what our teachers do is at each grade level, really, is there's this informal assessment that happens intrinsically during teaching and learning, where teachers review what their set standards are. And because of our collaborative learning or collaboration vertically with the grades above and below us, we know what the standards are below, and we know what the standards are going to be later on. And there's always this remediation sort of teaching that happens during the first couple weeks of school. And then if a teacher's ever worried that they're not going to organically be able to get that student up to speed, we have our student support teams and our student study groups that that teachers reference these students to or refer these students to for them to get different tiered interventions like those tier 2 and tier 3 things. And that happens very organically and very naturally. And I would say much the proof is almost is in the pudding. So typically we have not had a student not graduate because of MCAS scores since I've been here. So whatever, this organic system seems to, or group of systems seems to be pretty effective. And that's heavy-handed on a teacher's ability to deliver an effective instruction and to measure and to know what the standards are.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. So if there's no other questions on MCAS, I need to give a shout out to the Alice Shaver Foundation. Annually for, I don't know, maybe 15 years, they have been giving us a gift of $5,000. This foundation it's a trust based out of Williamstown. Some of you are probably pretty familiar with it. And what started as, I believe, a benefactor for our annual Gettysburg trip transitioned to general support of student activities and activities. So we use this money, it's a $5,000 donation to offset different learning opportunities, special student programming, and speakers. So I've written a nice thank you letter to the trustees, and we are very thankful for their contributions. And it really goes towards us striving to build and to build our students' cultural capital. So whether it be Gettysburg or WICMA, we're trying to increase the diversity of our students' lived experiences. So thank you to the, and I believe, I don't know if you have to vote on it. I didn't look at the.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve the Alice Shaver Foundation gift?
So moved.
Julia moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Curtis seconds. Any discussion? Carrie?
Sorry, I just had a question. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's specific to field trips still. Is that correct? Does it say that in the letter?
It says, yeah, funding your school trips.
Funding school trips. So I wonder if that does restrict the use of the gift to field trips. And if that's the case, then can you just give us a sense of what field trips might be on the horizon? You mentioned WICMA. Are there others that come to mind? Because yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So I believe the spirit of the gift wasn't necessarily pigeonholed to just field trips. I believe it was student opportunities. That is not exactly what it says there. So I can see your the clarification. However, for example, right now we were looking at a field trip to Masmoka, and we're also looking to do our annual hike up Mount Greylock for the 9th grade. So definitely towards funding for transportation for that. So within the next month, there's funding for our transportation to those events.
Thank you.
Hey, any further discussion?
And if anyone wants to volunteer to hike up with the 9th grade cohort, you are more than welcome. It's hard getting substitutes for teachers, so I'm trying to rally support for some local volunteers who would like to help out the 9th grade class?
So I'm happy to volunteer, subject to veto by my son, who's in 9th grade. So
It's a big mountain, Steve. You don't have to be right next to him.
there we go then.
Okay, all in favor?
Owen, I.
Connery, aye.
Constantine, I.
Elfenbein, aye.
Green eye.
Miller, aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, Jake. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item. We have Director of Special Education Services update.
Good evening, everyone. You mind if I share my screen?
Go for it.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I'm here to give the special education update for October 2021, Mount Greylock Regional School District. So I'm comparing our this year's numbers to last year's numbers at this time. I believe I pulled these numbers on Friday, October 8th. At the high school, we have roughly the same number of IEPs from last year to this year. So we had 73 last year, we have 74. At Williamstown Elementary, we had 56, so we've gone down a little bit, down to 50. And in Lanesboro, roughly the same. We had 38 at this point last year, and now we have 36. And across the district, we have 167 IEPs compared to 166. Mount Greylock Regional High School, again, just showing the number difference in a bar graph. I'm sure you guys have had your fill of bar graphs today, so I figured I'd add to it. So again, we had 73 last year, we have 74 this year, an increase of 1. We actually gone down in Lanesboro by 2 from 38 to 36. And again, in Williamstown from 56 to 50. So to show you the percentages of across the district, and this year it broke down to 14%, which is roughly the same as last year at 15%. Lanesboro was down to 12% compared to 20% last year. Williamstown gone up a little bit, 17% compared to 15% of our students. And at the high school, roughly it's the same, 14% students on IEPs at the high school. Staffing breakdown in our department for special education and related services. The faculty includes at Williamstown 2 pre-K teachers, 1 grade K through 2 special education teacher, 3 grade 3 through 6 special education teachers, a developmental special education teacher for our essential skills program there, 2 speech and language pathologists, which is really 1.5 because 1 splits their time up to high school. We have an occupational therapist, again, is about a 0.4 at Williamstown and spends a day and a half at the high school. We have a physical therapist that services all 3 schools, so she'll show up in both buildings here. We have a social worker at Williamstown Elementary and 1 school psychologist / counselor. Lanesboro, we have 2 pre-K teachers, 1 grade K through 3 special education teacher, 1 grade 4 through 6 special education teacher, a speech and language pathologist, 1 occupational therapist, 1 physical therapist, again, that's shared among the 3 schools. This year we added a social worker in Lanesboro who's providing social skills services at Lanesboro. And we have a school psychologist / counselor at Lanesboro Elementary. I just realized I left off that we do have 1 developmental special education teacher in Lanesboro Elementary who joined us this year, and she's been a great addition. Sorry about leaving that off. Again, at the high school, at Mount Greylock, we have 2 7 through 8 special education teachers. So we have 1 in each grade, 7 and 8. We have 2 9 through 12 special education teachers. So the 2 teachers in the high school, 1 takes 9-10 grade level and the other takes 11-12. We have 1 life skills special education teacher, speech and language pathologist who provides those services to the students who need it. It's up there like 1.5 days a week, depending on their caseload at the time. An occupational therapist who spends most of her days in Williamstown, but is at the high school a day and a half a week. Again, a physical therapist who services the students at the high school. We added a social worker, so we have 2 school social workers and 1 school psychologist / counselor. And in our office of special education services, we have 1 director of special education services, 1 special education team leader who is starting this week, I believe Monday. Her name is Destiny Hicks, and I'm very excited to have her. And we also have a new special education services administrative assistant, Vicki Winchell, who's been a great addition to our team and has transitioned nicely into our role. So we're formalizing our team and our office, and we're ready to hit the ground running. Just some updates in our department. We currently have 3 high school out of district tuition placements. We have 4 elementary out of district services only students. Typically these students do drive-in services if they don't currently attend our pre-K or kindergarten, and then we also service a number of students in our either homeschool or private schools in the district or in the towns of Lanesboro and Williamstown. Circuit breaker was completed. I handed it in July, and I believe the payments have started or are just about to start relatively soon. All of our federal IDEA grants have been submitted. Every year we have the 240 and 262, which are entitlement grants. This year we had the 252 and 264, which was a part of the American Recovery Plan monies that was distributed to the schools for special education purposes. Our parental advisory council meetings have started and are ongoing. We've had 1 so far, and I believe the council intends to have another in November. And professional development, yours truly went away for a week about 2 weeks ago down to Randolph to be trained for crisis prevention intervention skills. And I'm able to teach our staff up to and including applied physical intervention skills for the students that require those interventions. And we've also sent a couple of our teachers, I believe in Lanesboro, to the Wilson Reading Program to pilot getting our special education teachers that certification and how that may impact our students. And we are working with the other districts in North County, McCann, Northern Berkshire School Union, North Adams, and we have jointly hosted the Parents' Right to Know Night November 9th, and that will be a virtual Zoom meeting that we'll host relatively soon. And that's it for the special education update this year. I'll stop my share. So does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, Steve.
So thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask a timing question to just get this on people's radar screens. So it's my understanding that the district and the PAC have a community outreach towards the start of the year on a basic rights seminar where there's a representative from the Federation for Children with Disabilities who presents an overview of the IEP qualifying process and items like that. Is this correct? And if so, has a time been set for this?
Yeah, that was the Parents' Rights to Know Night, November 9th.
Okay, November 9th. Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, that's what that is. We call it the right to know, but you're right. That's
okay,
the process they review.
I just want to get this advertised as many ways as possible. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah, Julia?
Two math-related questions, just so I understand what's behind the numbers. I noticed that the district special ed numbers are up, but just by 1, but when you add up the sum of the Mount Greylock, Lanesboro Elementary, and Williamstown, they're down collectively. So I'm wondering if that difference is students who are, I don't remember the term, but older than, like, maybe they're over age, or are those the homeschooled students?
For the difference in,
I'm sorry, what?
For the difference in actual hard numbers or percentages?
Well, I had another question about the percentages. I'm just trying to get a flavor for where the students are that we're serving. If you go back to the slide that you had of total numbers, the one slide that had all the bars for each of the schools. Maybe I was doing my math wrong.
Hold on. Let me, can you see this right now or no?
No.
Of course, my mouse disappears on me.
I think by the time we all get it down, we'll be back in person. Right.
There you go. Okay. So
The first, the next slide. Yeah.
Yes.
So the question is, Mount Greylock is up by 1, West and Les are down by 6 or 8, but the district is up by 1. So I'm trying to figure out where those other students are.
Yeah, yes, you're right. The students that are drive-in services and out of district.
Got it. Okay, thank you. The last slide also was interesting, and I'm sure there's a quick answer to this one. So Lanesboro Elementary is down 2 IEPs, but 8% as a percentage of students. That was a significant drop as a percentage of students. Is that just a lot of students coming in aren't identified?
Actually, I think it's the increase in enrollment.
Okay,
The increase in enrollment would drive down the percentage.
Right. And the ratio of the new students is not as high for special ed needs.
Yes,
Yeah, got
exactly. I believe last year, and Nolan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I used a 188 count, and this year I used a 209 count for the total student body.
Right. Interesting.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I figured that would be asked. Yeah, Carrie.
So I have a question about 504s. I thought I remembered in one of the sets of minutes that we had for tonight that the 504s are now at the district level. Or did I misunderstand that? That the 504s are now under the director of special education rather than in the guidance or principal's offices?
No, the 504s remain with the principal's offices and tend to be guidance offices at the high school level and distributed among a couple of different folks at the elementary level, Gary. So that was actually working to sort of pull those away from the director of special education services. And
I thought they had always been at the district level. I mean, at the school-based level. Okay, because it says in these minutes, by DESE standards, the special education director oversees the 504 services, which is when we were talking about the changing the title of the.
Yeah, I would have to go back and look at that, Carrie. It could be that for reporting services and for like the focused monitoring visits that the coordination tends to go through the special education director. But the actual planning.
So I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
So they still actually live with the principals and and in the buildings. Okay, so then my question is, would we ever see a report or hear a report on the changes in 504, the demands on 504 services, the way we would IEPs? And of course, the context is post-COVID and the increase in social emotional issues and possible challenges that affect how well kids can learn. And I know, I believe we'll see this a little bit also in your presentation, Jake, but I don't recall ever really hearing a report about 504s in the past.
Yeah, I think if the school committee desired that report, we could certainly report out around numbers and general types, maybe not specific diagnoses. But
Right, no, I think it would be particularly relevant post-COVID as we're talking about the needs of our students, just to see the trend perhaps over the last, couple of years and then the next couple of years.
Sure, we would be happy to do that, Carrie.
Curtis?
I was wondering if we had a pullout of MCAS data for our special education students. If that's something that's done regularly in our district, or if not, if that's something that we could do, that would be some interesting data to see.
Yeah, Curtis, we're not showing that tonight. I'll tell you, looking at it on a school level, it's often the case that within a specific grade level, there is not enough of a cohort size that the state reports it back. The principals are certainly aware of their individual students who are on IEPs and where they are. And we certainly looked hard at the district level data and what it tells us about the performance level relative to general education students. So, the answer is yes, that gets a look. I'll tell you, it was much easier in some ways to look at in places where there's just a higher percentage of students and larger grade level cohorts, at least from an institutional level, but the schools certainly look at that on an individual student by student, grade by grade basis.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, moving on. Next up on the agenda is the Finance Subcommittee report, and I will turn it over to Carrie Green.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion on the agenda in anticipation of receiving documents from Perkins Eastman. We have not received those documents or had not received them by the time the packet was put together or by earlier this afternoon. Joe may have an update for us on that, but I don't think, Joe, did you want to talk about the process at all? I know we did talk about the bid process in an earlier meeting. I don't think we need to talk about it until we're actually looking at documents, but if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about around, how the process is going so far, this would be an opportunity to do that, or you could pass.
We were expecting a proposal that would cover the design services needed, estimation services, and then the bid process for getting the field and track ready to go out to bid and then successfully bid. That's the proposal that we were expecting. We have not received it yet, which is a little bit frustrating given that it's been weeks in the making. So that is all the update that I have right now, but I can say that we're trying as hard as we can within the district to move things forward.
Great, thank you. That's it, Christina.
Great,
Unless
thank
someone
you,
wants
Carrie.
to talk about it. Yep.
That's great. You shaved off nine minutes of that agenda item, so we're getting close to being back on track. Next
Happy to help.
Next up on the agenda is the business administrator report, and I turn it over to Joe.
Thank you very much. And I think I will probably end up shaving more minutes off of this if I'm successful here, but we'll see how that goes. So FY22 Q1 business office update. Some things have proceeded this year as expected. Our local assessments with our towns. Thank you, Lanesboro. Thank you, Williamstown. You have been reliable, wonderful supporters. And that's continuing as planned. State's Chapter 70 funding, all per our plan from back in March. School choice enrollment and therefore projected revenue related to school choice, all in line with expectations. Same thing with tuition. And we're not currently expecting any surprises with funds that are still forthcoming related to transportation reimbursement and circuit breaker. Now, the things that are not expected primarily are positive. Grants. Last year, or in the last fiscal year, so in March of this year, our budget planned for about $1 million in grant spending that we would do. That was a conservative view. We at the time did not really know what the ARPA funds would look like. We didn't know how all of the federal grants that we're accustomed to receiving would play out. So we tried to make sure that we were protecting the interests of the district by conservatively forecasting that. The actual funds available total $2.36 million. Now, there's a big caveat there in that most of those funds have multi-year availability, which means, yes, the grants were awarded this year, but they're available to us this year, next year, and the year after that commonly. So they have 3-year windows. Which means it would be irresponsible for us to attempt to utilize all of those funds in year one. So we shouldn't think that all of a sudden we went from having $1 million to spend this year to needing to spend $2.3 million. It's nothing like that. Those funds are largely a result of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, which we've seen in the media a fair amount in all kinds of contexts over the last many months. And targeted state funding for augmenting all of our efforts to try to pull out of the pandemic stronger than the way we went in. Planning is underway right now for how we will present a budget for FY23 and how we'll look towards FY24 to incorporate the use of those funds. A lot of what our discussions center around within the district right now are what are one-time costs that we would propose incurring, which is commonly where people say grant funding should go, given that it cannot be expected to reoccur in the future. But also, what programs can we develop and then sustainably fund once these grant funds are gone in ways that will support the needs of the district for many, many years to come. So we're really taking that necessarily nuanced look at how to consider these funds. To break them down a little bit, we have ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, which were announced in the late spring as far as their amounts. Both of them have multi-year availabilities. ESSER 2 is a little bit north of $400,000, and ESSER 3 for us is $937,000. The other federal and state funds that are FY22 awards, the ones that are highlighted here are those that are really related to COVID that the state or the federal government implemented in response to COVID. So these are smaller packages. Many of them have targeted or restricted uses. So some, for instance, are only available for use within early childhood programs, so pre-K type programs. Some are restricted to certain types of special education uses. One right here in the middle of the 302 is related to only addressing the needs of children who are homeless. So there are a variety of ways to look at these funds that end up leading to the analysis of how do they fit into plans that we already have, or how do they allow us to create new plans that perhaps we did not think we would be able to put into action without these funds. The grant lines that are down, the 5 lines down towards the bottom, are federal grants that we commonly see year in and year out. They're programs that have existed for many years. These awards, as far as FY22 are concerned, are in line with where we would have expected them to be. They've perhaps seen a slight boost relative to prior years, but this is what we have typically seen within this district over the last couple of years, especially. as a 1,200 student approximately pre-K through 12 type school district. And then the last bucket of grants, these are grants that were awarded in FY21 and whose availability continues for another 2 years. So these, in terms of grant use, first in, first out is the way the federal and state governments promote use of grants. So this funding that we were able to carry over from FY21 into FY22 will be the first that we're making sure to fully utilize within the plans that we already had within the budget within FY22. So all in all, those 3 slides, this one, and this one, that's how you get your total of $2.362 million in grant funding available. Now, it's not all roses, because the ways that we've already moved outside of the budget as we had presented in March, as the principals talked about, Lanesboro and Williamstown Elementary Schools are each moving to increase by 1 teacher, 1 section. It's about $150,000 total cost to better support student needs and COVID related requirements within those classes. Special education services, many of our costs have increased. Student needs have increased in ways that are triggering expanded spending within that realm, and professional development. That's another area where if we look back to March, we already had plans for significantly expanded professional development, but there are definitely areas where we are bursting outside of even that plan as we had created it in March. Thankfully, all of the grant funding, all of the other supports that we have mean that we are well within our assessed operating needs and well within the state funding that we have, and we have plenty of room to wiggle and move as we get through this year. And we do have more continued COVID expenditures than expected, although they're not rocking any budget lines at all. And then one to be determined item, and Jake, I'm not sure if you're going to talk about this later, but within the weekly COVID safety check program, also known as the pooled testing program, the state had really come in like a lion this summer with an attempt to fully support districts in implementation of this program throughout the school year. And I think perhaps they bit off a little bit more than they could chew. The staffing that they had promised has not arrived in nearly the force that would be needed to implement it across our district. We have been relying on really heroic work by a lot of people volunteering within the district across all 3 schools to try to make sure we keep the program operating. We are currently in the minority in the state of schools that have been able to actually get it up and running and keep it running this year. So a big thank you to those staff, but we also know that the way we're operating it right now is not sustainable, not in its exact form. And so we are constantly looking at ways that we can create a sustainable model for the remainder of this year. So we might end up proposing some increased staffing costs around that program if the state cannot follow through with all the things that it's trying to do. But that's the update. Aside from that, we're on track. Things look good. And I think that from a programmatic and staffing perspective, we're in great shape given all of the curveballs that we continue to see from COVID and everything else. Any questions?
Joe, this is Carrie. I have a question about SR3. That application is due this month. Have we already sent that in?
Yes, that application was submitted a week or 2 ago.
And what kind of community input? I know Jake talked about the superintendents having some, could you just talk about the community input that went into crafting?
Sure, Carrie. The primary means of community input really across the state, and I know here locally, was via survey. All of our families were sent a very specific ESSER 3 survey. I think we got about 400 back. The overwhelming, and this shows up in the district improvement plan, not by name, but in fact, the overwhelming response was, please take care of kids' mental health and help them be well in their emotional and their social life, and where able, invest in the best curricular materials and professional development that you can, so students have the best tools in their hands, teachers have the best tools in their hands to learn. So we were pleased with the response rate that folks weighed in, and a lot of like very specific comments on the open-ended piece of that were helpful.
And that went to parents and guardians and caregivers. Did it also
did.
go to students, or not so much?
It went to parents and guardians and caretakers. We had several respondents say they were advocates for certain populations of students. It did not go, Carrie, directly to students.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I unfortunately do not have a student activity account update, but I will plan to provide that in November. I need to do some coordination with the buildings on that. So my apologies for not having that tonight.
Great, thanks, Joe. Okay, so next up is the superintendent report. Jake, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Apologies for that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Probably any time that we saved will now go into the abyss of the superintendent's report. So apologies in advance. Just a quick save the date and save the time as our families in the community that we serve were notified via email and will be notified again. Tuesday, October 19th at 6:00 p.m., we will be hosting a special Mount Greylock Regional School District School Committee meeting where Courtney Tunis, the consultant we've worked with, to gather a voice of students and community members and families, will present the Mount Greylock Regional School District Listening and Learning Project. So that's October 19th at 6 p.m. The link to the webinar is on all 3 school websites and the district website, and we will certainly be sending that out again at least once between now and next Tuesday. And we're very grateful to have the sobering opportunity to look at this all together. Just a couple of quick words on vaccination status. I will not read through this whole thing. But as you know, the state has put out there, although it is very subject to change, as superintendents were reminded by the commissioner yesterday, that 80% of staff and students in an upper level school, a school where all of the students are eligible to be vaccinated per age, is sort of the number at which the state suggests communities can start looking at unmasking should they desire. At Mount Greylock Regional School, if we look at everybody that is among our students, 77% of our students are either fully vaccinated or have their first vaccination and are awaiting their second. 74% are fully vaccinated. Of our staff, 74% of our staff report being fully vaccinated. And I do want to just remind people the note at the bottom. Somebody failing to report and show proof that they are vaccinated does not necessarily indicate that they are not vaccinated. It may indicate that they simply think this is none of our business, and so they choose not to report. And that can go for students and it can go for staff. But at this point, 74% of our staff report being fully vaccinated. At Mount Greylock Regional School, 85% of the staff report and have proven that they are fully vaccinated. Williamstown Elementary, 71% of the staff have reported being fully vaccinated. And at Lanesboro Elementary, 60% of the staff report being fully vaccinated. We continue to encourage our staff that one of the things that separates places like Massachusetts from states that are really suffering from COVID right now is the rate of individuals that are vaccinated. And so we certainly continue to support and endorse and urge all of our staff and all of our students who are able to be vaccinated to please be vaccinated. We are getting close at Mount Greylock Regional School to reaching that 80% threshold at which the state says we can consider this, which will activate the JLMC so that we can discuss this and come back with a recommendation to the school committee. And I do want to, on that last slide, Joe is correct. The state made many promises about testing that they were aspirational promises. I think the state and state officials are working incredibly hard to fulfill those promises. In the meantime, it is people like Joe who have made this work in school districts that are fortunate enough to have people like Joe, and the many volunteers who come in early and stay late to make sure that our testing program continues. We would like to just remind our percentages of students who are signed up for and participating in pool testing at Williamstown Elementary and Lanesboro Elementary. Almost 100% of our students that are signed up do participate. At the middle and high school, we really want to urge students to, if you are signed up, please participate. We promise you that you will not be in trouble for being a minute or two late to class if you are. So we encourage families to really urge their students to participate. Jose, do you have your hand up?
I do, Jake. Yeah, apologies for interrupting, but I just wanted to revisit the previous slide.
Yes.
And I appreciate that, what I'm about to say may be divisive, but I find some of the numbers that you've reported to us about vaccination rates for our staff to be troubling. In August, it sounds like the MTA recommended a requirement for vaccinations for teachers and staff and students who are 12 and older. Other school districts across the country have mandated vaccinations, but with clear exceptions. I'm curious about what justifies our approach to vaccinations for students and staff within our school district.
If you mean like what individuals would use for their justification, that's one thing.
No, sorry, Jake. As a district, I'm curious about what our options are for moving these numbers.
Yeah.
Upwards.
So
and are we what are we considering in terms of the options that are available to us to move these numbers up?
Yeah, I got you. Thank you for that clarification. We certainly do have several staff members. Certainly doesn't account for all of these numbers, but we do have several staff members who simply did not believe it's not in their best medical interest, given other circumstances that they're living in, to be vaccinated. So we do have some people who really cannot be vaccinated. Right now for our staff, for the MOA that we agreed to in August, the options are proof that you're vaccinated or test weekly. And that's where we are. And then we're encouraging folks to get vaccinated. Governor Baker has made a mandate about employees that are in the executive branch of the government. We certainly know that some of our neighbors that provide healthcare professionally have provided mandates. Neither the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed nor our own legal counsel recommend an ultimatum of do this or you can't come to work here anymore. So we are continuing and I know that our union colleagues here locally are doing the same, as is the state union, of really encouraging people to please get vaccinated. What can we do to incentivize this? I don't know. I'm not really there for terribly negative or disincentives at this point, or making it so painful not to that you must. But we are certainly continuing to push that as many of our staff as are healthily able to be vaccinated are vaccinated.
So if I may interject there just for a second,
Sure.
Especially with Lanesboro Elementary, where you see 60% of staff, the percentage of staff there that are actually fully vaccinated is significantly higher. I can't speak to the exact percentage just off of personal knowledge, but the number of people who have either just not taken the time to report it, they have lost their card, or they're not reporting it for a particular reason, it is high enough on a small enough pool of people. When you look at 40 people within the building, 60% is a number where I think percentages don't tell the full story there. So I think that's another important thing, just as far as perception to know or to take into account. It's that we don't have everybody reporting fully yet, but that's another side of the effort that we're trying to push more within all the bounds that we need to.
Thank you, Joe. And that's sort of where I would put the period on the sentence is, the deadline was we need to know by October 1st. We sent out reminders leading up to that. We've sent out several reminders since, and now we're to the point where we're sending out reminders to individual staff members. And there is a degree, and perhaps in some places a significant degree, to which what somebody's actually chosen to do in terms of getting the vaccination, just we don't have the proof of it yet for a variety of reasons, from forgetfulness to the proof is not findable, but we're working on it. So thanks for that, Joe.
Yeah, and I'll just, I appreciate that, Joe, for that clarification. I think, unfortunately for the school committee, our only ability to assess our situation is through the data that our administration report to us. And that's what we see before us on the screen. I think as recently as April, the CDC had an estimate that in terms of teachers across the country, that they were looking at an 80% vaccination rate. These numbers are much lower, even for Williamstown Elementary. Could we ask, or I'm trying to think about the best way to phrase this question for both you, Joe, or I guess this is the question for you, Jake. Can you tell the committee or offer some indication that these numbers will be different in November?
I can offer that I can offer that we are pushing to have them better. I am loath to make promises around something that I ultimately do not have real control over, but I can promise on behalf of the district the effort. And I think we're joined in that effort by many colleagues who do every kind of work that there is to be done in the district, Jose.
Thanks, Jake.
You're welcome. Thank you. Moving on to, and thank you for those questions and those clarifications, and I dare say for that push for our staff that are not vaccinated but could be, to please consider doing so. General personnel matters, this first bullet requires a vote. The second bullet does not, it is informational. I'm going to go through both, and then if we can go back to the vote. We are moving tonight, and you're in a possession of a letter from the Mount Greylock Education Association to accrete a physical therapist position into the Mount Greylock Educators Association. I have no explanation for why, except for when this person was hired once upon a time, they were not brought in to the district as being under the union umbrella. This individual is really the lone person who holds a certificate, a professional certificate, is on the MGRSD salary schedule. She is in all ways should be in the union, and I would dare say is somebody that that values this individual and respects this individual and wants her to have all of the protections as she does her job well every day, that she should absolutely be in the union. I think it was an oversight once upon a time that we now have the opportunity to correct, and would ask you to vote in favor of this tonight. And I guess we can pause there if that's appropriate, and somebody could make the motion if you're interested, and then we can do the second bullet.
Sure, I'm happy to make the motion. I'd like to make a motion to accrete a physical therapist position into the Mount Greylock Educators Association.
Miller, second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Owen, I.
Conry, aye.
Constantine, aye.
Elfenbein, aye.
Green, I.
Miller, aye.
Okay, thank you, that motion passes.
Thank you. And I will admit, I am not familiar with that word accrete, and so I could figure it out by context clues, as my elementary colleagues would say. But if you had to go look that word up, please know you are not alone. You had company in me. The second thing that falls under, the second item that falls under general personnel matters is our school nurse at Williamstown Elementary School, Carol Stein-Payne, has given us notice of her intent to resign in about a week and a day. And she is going to be moving to a school in a district that she is excited about. And as a colleague, we're excited that she's going to have an opportunity to take on this new challenge. This does mean that Cindy Sheehy and her team will be running through a process to hire a school nurse. But through our particularity of Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 53, school committees actually are the approving authority and the hiring authority for school nurses, not school principals, as school principals per ed reform have vast powers of hiring, but you hire the school nurses. So with your permission, I am assuming that you would like to delegate the running of the process to the principal, in this case, Ms. Sheehy, and then we will be bringing a recommendation back to you for your approval to actually onboard a new school nurse for Williamstown Elementary. And that may require, alongside of the proposal from the landscape architects, this may require a very brief special meeting, depending on availability of substitute nurses. We cannot not have a nurse providing health services for our students. So this may require a brief special meeting for the school committee to consider approval of this position. So I just want to give you that heads up. Are there any questions about that or concerns about that?
Jake, this is Carrie. I have a concern about the length of time that it might take to find someone, and whether there is the possibility of hiring a temp or a long-term substitute.
Yeah, we are moving in the temp direction because this is not going to happen in a week. And we are very open. Cindy and Jonathan and I spent quite a bit of time today discussing options, temporary in the immediate, long-term substitute in the mid-range, and perhaps if the applicant pool is not where we need it to be for the good of our kids, perhaps looking at a long-term substitute for an actual longer term until we get the applicant pool that we feel is most respectful to the students and families that attend WES. Thanks, Carrie. Okay, if there is nothing else on that, I will move into the next piece of this, which is the district improvement plan. You all have seen the school improvement plans. The district improvement plan is, I'm not going to read all of this. It is a requirement of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. But I have always, whether it was as a principal or as a superintendent, a district improvement plan is really an opportunity to do more than simply a bureaucratic function of, here's the plan, you approved it, now we can move on and go back to business as usual. I don't see this as a just ticking the box exercise. I see it as an opportunity, as I do with my own goals, which will be coming next month, which will support this plan as this plan supports the school improvement plan. See it as an opportunity to share who we are, what we believe, where our priorities lie, and how we think we can better serve the families that are our clients, our customers, and that it's our honor and privilege to get to serve as public educators. This particular plan, I think for folks that would like to see a hyper detailed roadmap with all of the twists and turns of a country road, may be disappointed in this plan. That I would understand that. This plan in some ways is almost more of a vision than it is a step by step. These steps do come through to some degree what's an iterative process, and in some degree needs to be more informed by the people who will actually be carrying out the plan. But I think this plan shows firmly where our destination needs to be, which is creating a better school district for the good of children, for the children that we're here to serve. You know, as you saw, if you look through the longer version of the plan, this is the condensed version without some of the supporting material. I really like this metaphor of building. You know, our students in this school district in all three of our schools get to go to really magnificent spaces for learning. Places that were well thought, well designed, well built, and that we take good care of because the work that they house is really important. I like this metaphor of building for an improvement plan because, you know, like builders, their job is to plan for and execute a space that is going to improve the life or the business or the well-being of whatever the purpose of that building is for. Our work is to build happy, healthy, ethical, responsible, and productive human beings who are going to be the leaders of our community, of our state, of our nation, and our world in the blink of an eye. We work with families and our community to do this all important work. So we're like a team of construction professionals coming together. And this work requires personal and individual excellence and dedication, but it also requires a communal or team excellence and dedication. If you read through the actual lengthier plan, I found the process of being a part of the team that constructed the $121 million Taconic High School to simply be a transformative experience for me as a learner and as an educator. The level of organization, the level of teamwork actually people with close ties to the community that we're sitting in right now. I consider mentors and friends now, because they taught me so much about this process, and in doing so taught me so much about my own work as a superintendent. And so we're kind of using this this metaphor of building. We're building community, we're building wellness, we're building opportunity, and we're building ways of gathering information. And if I had to do this graphic over again, I think I'd have community, wellness, and opportunity, and information would be the foundation of the building, actually, as I continue to think through this, because it's that information, it's data that is both quantitative and qualitative that informs what do we need to do to build a better, more cohesive, more sustainable community. What do we need to do to build students that are more well, that are happier, that are healthier, that are more productive? And what do we need to build? What information helps inform us about the opportunity gaps that exist here in our school district? So moving on, we are going to look at each of those 4 items as an individual building block as we're trying to build school and district improvement. So the driving questions that we examined in terms of looking at community: how do we eliminate incidents of hate, mistrust, and bullying? That's the what do we need to get rid of. The what we need to be, what we should aspiring to be, is building a greater sense of belonging so that every student, every family really knows that this place is their place. How do we build a greater sense of empathy and being a responsible, respectful neighbor? How do we create introspective, reflective practitioners who are constantly on guard themselves against entrenched and recognized and often unrecognized biases of all kinds? Then how do we finally become a more anti-racist community? How do we become a community that better supports our neighbor color? How do we become, and we could expand that, how do we support our neighbors of all kinds of the wonderful ways that human beings come? So some objectives as we look at this building block of community. We must build a better sense of belonging for all students, families, and staff through work to become more culturally aware, or culturally competent, and to be more responsive to challenges and events of hate speech and bullying. Primary, right alongside this type of training, is the development of a structure and a regular response plan that spans an incident of hate, an incident of bullying, from reporting to taking the report and means of delivering the report, to the immediate response and care for the person that is the target of this, to how we follow up both with a student and with a family, but also with the community. The activities that we're working on along these lines, we're working with Dr. Kathy Joshi. We have a 3-year commitment with Dr. Joshi to have the majority, if not all, of our faculty and staff complete the graduate level course, Teaching for Diversity and Social Justice. We talked earlier tonight about 60 of us, or about 45 of us are going through the full course. The administrators are getting a truncated version, but also having individual and group consult time with Dr. Joshi so we can all improve our own practice. And so we think over the 3 years, we can really encapsulate almost our entire staff. Along with that ongoing activity, already talked about this, the admin will have group and individual consultation with Dr. Joshi. Dr. Joshi will also be meeting with individual teachers and with individual school faculties to address some of the challenges that we're just feeling like we need help and support with in real time. And she is absolutely committed to helping us build a reporting and response structure that keeps children and the negative impact of these events at the center of that structure. And so that's sort of our most short order immediate work. You heard Cindy talk about her time with Dr. Joshi and Dr. Joshi's time that's upcoming with the staff, that we really have to be, for the good of our kids, better responders as adults. We are working to recruit and retain a more racially and culturally diverse workforce across all of the positions in the district. We are focusing on licensed educators. We want people in classrooms, in administrative offices, including further consideration of a position that we heard about many times last year as we prepared our budget, a director of equity and belonging. Included in this work is pursuing grant opportunities to this end. We have applied for a grant from the state, a very competitive grant. I don't know that we have much of a chance of that, but we're taking our chances. As they say, you know, you can't win if you don't play. So we did work on a grant and put a good one together and submitted it. But we're also working with the community and organizations in the community, and we'll be working with MGIA to explore means of incentivizing teachers who represent a variety of diverse communities. Consider coming from where they are to here. We have a meeting next month with some of our colleagues from MCLA to hear about some work they're doing to help promote and support this work in the county. And the measurement of that will be very clear. It's what do our professionals look like in this district as we proceed from year to year to year. And then of course, a fourth activity along this particular objective is we are continuing to examine our curricular material, whether it's material we already use and perhaps need to accelerate not using because of its inappropriateness, or new materials. We also are continuing to look at our classroom and library collections to ensure that all of our students see themselves in real ways, in important ways, in vibrant ways, and most importantly, in true and meaningful ways in the materials that our students are exposed to or are expected to learn from. And so, you know, our measurement will really be looking at continuously auditing and making sure that we are kind of out with the inappropriate and in with the more expansive and in with the more appropriate. A second objective toward the building block of community is to build and implement a real and working system of restorative practices in grades pre-K through grade 12. So that students are required to move beyond personal actions, lead to consequences, and now we're done, everybody goes back about their business. We really want students to be in a mind of considering things from an empathetic viewpoint, and to consider the value of restitution and how to make restitution as a part of the learning process, to become a more full human being and a better neighbor. We talk about restorative practices in our mission statement. I think we have a staff, from administrative staff to our teaching staff to our paraprofessional staff, who are kind of thirsting for, no, let's actually do this work. We talk about it. Let's dig in a little deeper and do the work, and that's going to require expertise. So we are working at identifying key individuals within each building that we are going to have as champions for restorative practices in each building, and we're going to be training them as trainers to do this work, model this work, and train others to do and model this work within their buildings. So the measurement for this is simply, do we have these people doing this work, and do we, you know, by the end of this year, are we ready to enter into the 22-23 school year with a slate of restorative opportunities for students and get out of this notion of crime and punishment and actually help students use incidents as learning experiences. I think we need to revisit some policies and practices relative to restorative practices and consequences through our policy subcommittee. I think there's several layers that we have to look through some policies, not only policies we have, but policies we don't have and should. that will make us a more welcoming community and draw clearer lines in the sand of who we are, what we believe, and where we stand. And then the third activity under this objective is to consider with staff in each building the need and staffing of a student support center in each building so that students can be given directed processing time and facilitation in real time in each school. Mount Greylock has this. Mount Greylock has probably the most fully formed restorative model in the district. But we know intuitively, and we know because research tells us so, that the more we can get into these types of best practices with our younger students, the more we won't have to do this work at the high school, in the middle school, which means there's less work to undoing certain notions because we're building at the earliest level. So, you know, a student support center does have budgetary implications. So we will be looking at staffing, at space, budgetary implications, and the data that would drive the need for this in all three of our schools. The second building block we want to address is wellness, and not just wellness in the physical sense, obviously, as we've already discussed. You know, it's one of the foundations that all learning is built on is on a mentally well young person. And that requires a real partnership between home and the school. And in many ways, it requires a real partnership among home, school, and the rest of the community. So our driving questions around wellness is how do we help students be happier, healthier, and more productive in their emotional life and their mind? How do we help students balance what they feel they need to do and what they want to do? And while we're doing that, how do we ensure they still have time to be kids? I've had 3 children go kindergarten through grade 12, do the college search thing. I can tell you, you have your own experience as parents, you have your own experience as educators, some of you in different institutions. The very real pressure that students feel, particularly at the high school, to pack in more and more and more in order to be as attractive and as appealing as they can be to selective colleges is unreal. And it shows up in so many ways. It shows up on college campuses and the number of mental health professionals that they're having to add to their rosters of staff. And that trickles to us and it shows up here. Some of you with more recent elementary school experience as parents than I have know that some of the decisions you're making in elementary school ultimately are about filling up and filling in that high school resume for when it's time to go on to college. And I think we really need to, we know that that's a reality because we know what college admissions is and how it works. But I do think we need to be a little bit more, I don't know if it's thoughtful, I don't know if it's caring, it's something. We want to offer more experiences that kids want and the kids need, but we also want to offer students, you know, the notion that you cannot necessarily be great at every single thing you do and be happy. And that what you like to do and what your passions are matter. And then how do we serve students who really, really, really need us in ways that go beyond academics and go beyond the teaching of subject matter? I look at some of our students, whether I'm at Lanesboro Elementary, I talk to them, or at Williamstown Elementary or over Mount Greylock. Some of our students, quite frankly, they would just be amazing and have amazing outcomes no matter where they are. Because they are who they are, their families are who they are. But there are some students that you know, school plays an important role in the lives of all of those students, but for some students, we're really the key We're the keystone that is going to hold up the arch of their success academically and in life. And we need to be thinking about those kids all the time. Heard it in some of your questions around MCAS scores. Well, it's great that we're above the state average, but what about the students that aren't? What are we doing for them? So in wellness, social and emotional wellness, absolutely the foundation on which physical wellness, academic wellness are built. To address all of these different types of wellnesses, the district will run processes to examine the potential for moving the start time of Mount Greylock to a later time and the implications that this has on not only our elementary school families, but on the rest of our community, on our child care partners, on the availability of child care if we move times for the high school, and on after school life in terms of fine arts, performing arts, and athletics. You know, we use the same school buses. I know this is really obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. We use the same school buses to transport our elementary school kids once the middle and high school runs are done. Therefore, whatever we do with the middle and high school start time is going to have an impact on our elementary schools. Unless we use different buses, double up on the number of drivers, and I have to tell you, that's simply not a reality from a financial perspective or from a labor availability perspective. So we have to really think deeply about this. Really looking forward to having an opportunity to empower some of our students across the parking lot here at Mount Greylock, because many of these students are thinking deeply about this. And where I see it academically, and I used to see it as a parent, these students are actually living what it means to start their day so early in the day. So we're going to be working with our students and school council. We're going to be working with other school districts. Thank you, Christina, for directing us to our friends out east in Dover-Sherborne. We're going to work with national organizations. I've already done several webinars with an organization called Let's Sleep. Thank you to somebody at Williams College and to Gary, another person from Williams College, for directing me toward those folks, and identify the need and consider possibilities for a change to school start time. To me, the case is really clear. We have years of research that suggests this is better for kids, and whatever is better for kids is generally better for families in the long run. But we're looking at, you know, January, February of 2022 to really just state the case that this is something we should pursue. And that will lead into activity number 2, which is actually getting some working groups together around the different issues and around the different ripples that this pebble of a time change will cause. To look into not only how do we consider this, how do we actually do it? We want to have the work groups up and meeting by the end of January of the upcoming year. And I think that I clearly mistyped on this next bullet, December of 21. I think we were probably, I think I just cut and pasted from the wrong space or something there. I think we would really look at having maybe a change be ready for institution in September of 22, which I think is really ambitious. But I also think that this is a district that, you know, we're 1,100 students. We're 2 communities that clearly and palpably care deeply about their children. And I think if any district, any school district in the Commonwealth is positioned to actually do this, while lots of other districts talk about it, it's the Mount Greylock Regional School District. Another objective that falls under the building block of wellness is simply paying homage to the fact that a lot of our students have deep stressors that I struggle even to imagine what it would have been like when I was 15 or 16 or 18 or whatever, or even 7 or 8 or 12. You know, these are increasing, these stressors, these pressures, And the nuances that in the ways that kids are coming to school are also appear to be increasing. You know, we're having students at very early ages, some of whom are coming in having experienced some really deep trauma, some of whom are coming in with some really deep needs in terms of mental wellness and behavior. And so we really have to pay close attention to the number, the type, and the availability of mental health professionals and services that our students have access to. This includes people within the school system, people outside of the school system, and increasingly it includes mental health services that are really aimed very clearly at behavioral supports, where behavior is simply getting in the way of a student attending and a student being present even when they are literally present at school. All staff on the organizational chart from the superintendent's office on through the chart have to be better positioned to understand trauma-informed instruction and trauma-informed practices. We have to be better versed with the challenges that students coming from a economically difficult background present in school. And we need to be better equipped to deliver a variety of services and supports across the district, in each building and in each classroom. A crucial piece of this work obviously lies in the realm of belonging, which we, will see spread throughout all of this work. So we are looking at professional development for all staff and trauma-informed practices, and in the nuances of delivering instruction and services to folks that are experiencing deep economic difficulties and the things that are related to that at home. Joe talked about the fact that our PD package for this year was already a pretty sizable package. We're looking at expanding that package even further. Not because we want to necessarily, not because we have the spare time to do it, but because we need to for the good of our kids. And so we will be looking at the number of staff participating in this type of ED. We'll be looking at how we're doing in developing these resources. And we will be looking at, there's clearly a gap. You'll hear it from Courtney when she presents on the 19th. We see it in our MCAS data. There is a gap here in our towns, just like there is in every town in Berkshire County, Massachusetts, the United States, and likely the world. There's a gap between folks who really have a lot of support at home, economically, mentally, physically, nutritionally, the list goes on, and those who don't. And so we really want to dig in and take a look at our numbers around economically disadvantaged students or students that are identified by the state as high needs. A second of activity under this wellness piece is to identify the behavioral and emotional staff support that we need in each of the 3 buildings to ensure that we're offering the right kinds of supports that actually help, not just Band-Aid, students as early as we possibly can. This will include an examination of staffing our schools with a person or two who happens to have who happens to be a board certified behavioral analysis, a BCBA, where this is appropriate. Right now, we use outside consultants for this work. My experience would suggest, I think research further suggests that having this level of expertise right in a building so they can work with teachers, coach students, work with families in real time as things are happening is a steep investment on one hand, but it may allow us to keep our precious students here in our school district rather than having them out in day programs, which are expensive, which take them from their peers here at home, or even in residential programs, which then take them from their family. So, one of our activities is to look deeply at the need, the appropriateness, and where we would deploy positions like BCBAs within our district. Obviously, the measurement is looking at behavioral data for really a smallish number of students, but in some ways a deeply needy group of students, for individual students in classrooms and school-wide data on discipline, which is really obvious, but then also where behavior impacts academic performance, not only of the individual child, but sometimes the children around that child, because the behaviors can be so distracting and so time consuming of the teacher and the paraprofessional in the room. Third building block, and I do promise you we are reaching the end at some point. Third building block is opportunity, driving questions around opportunity. Do we distribute opportunities equally among all of our students? I think we're going to hear from Courtney that the answer to that, many people perceive that the answer to that is a pretty strong no. What opportunities are our students missing out on altogether? There's some opportunities that some get, some don't. Sometimes, often that's quite appropriate. Sometimes it's just because we're not framing the opportunities or supporting the opportunities in the right way. There may be some opportunities that none of our students are getting. We're a rural district. It would be almost geographically impossible for us to be any further in Williamstown and Lanesboro from where the center of energy, money, time and focus is from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed in Malden and in Metro Boston. Our students may be missing out on opportunities altogether. Can we expand opportunities in new ways? We know that we can use technology to connect students from various places with teachers from various places. Can we expand opportunities in ways that are affordable, but also create a better sense of celebrating what some of our individual students find really fuels their passion, their talents, and their interests? And just really thinking about, are there ways that we could be leveraging what students are able to do, but we're not quite there for providing it? Could we fill that gap? Objective in this world, decrease several participation and performance gaps that exist between students identified as having disabilities and their non-disabled peers, and students identified as having high needs and those who are not identified. So, you know, clearly we do have gaps that show up in perceptions of gaps, which are real to some degree or another, between regular ed students, general ed students, and students who need a little more support to level the playing field, whether that's because of a disability, whether that's because of a linguistic barrier, economic barriers, or some combination of all of those. So we want to work to identify professional development and scheduling practices that will help schools in the district better and more fully collect and act on data and provide interventions and instruction to help close persistent achievement gaps between and among students, particularly special education students for this activity and their non-special education peers. Lots of data sources to measure this, from, you know, sense of belonging and where parents are with feeling about how their kids are included and what the opportunities are, to much more traditional MCAS data, grade level data, formative assessment data, and teacher impressions and teacher generated data. And then the second activity under this particular objective, consider what supports would allow for greater success for specific subgroups of high school students to attempt higher level coursework, such as college coursework or AP placement or AP classes. Work to identify budgetary implications that may be associated with this effort. When I was superintendent in Lee, we were one of the first districts in Western Massachusetts that began working with a group that had a good deal of funding from the Gates Foundation to look at really widening the gates for letting students take AP and get out of having advanced placement be an exclusive club, let more students in through A, encouraging more students to get in, and then B, supporting the heck out of students that needed support so that they could prove to themselves, and they prove it to their teachers, they prove it to their parents, but it's most important they prove it to themselves that they're capable of doing college level work. We did the same thing in Pittsfield. We saw our AP program grow. It grew in all the right ways, meaning that we had more economically disadvantaged students, Black students, Latino students, and special needs students taking AP than at any time in Pittsfield's history. And our scores didn't go down. In fact, in some areas, our scores stayed constant. And in a couple of areas, our scores actually went up. But it took a lot of work to support students. And it took a lot of work to convince students that this opportunity is for you. So we really want to look at, maybe it's through leveraging technology for some of our students to be able to take super low incidence courses with other students from here, there, and everywhere. Maybe it's opening up AP a little bit more. Maybe it's just looking at things differently. But we really want to start looking at this notion in a district that is so dripping with opportunities. We want to look at having nobody be able to say at the end of their career, I wish I would have had that opportunity. We'd rather give them the opportunity, have them say no for good reason, than to reach the end and say, I wish you would have given me that opportunity or opened that door for me. So we will be looking at things like subgroup participation and accelerated academics. When I look at our percentage of students at the middle and high school that are taking fine arts courses, I'm a little bit alarmed. I suspect that alarm is shared by some others in the community and some parents in the community. That's part and parcel of this too. I think a piece of that is packing up that college resume, with as much advanced work as you can. So maybe we need to allow that to happen, because that may be what a student really believes they need and what they want. But then we need to find some alternative ways for them to not lose out on the richness of fine arts opportunities or performing arts opportunities. And we need to do a better job, I assume, because everywhere does, of really celebrating all of the success in all of these opportunities, and really have the level of excitement that goes into some athletic functions coming into some academic and fine arts functions. Opportunity, and I got into this in the last slide, so I'll go through this one quickly because I do realize it's getting late. We want to undertake work to better ensure that academic, fine arts, and interest-based learning opportunities are available, that they're advertised, and where possible, facilitated by the school and the school district. The activities include looking at options for more students to experience more diverse and maybe more challenging and enriching academic and artistic opportunities, using our own staff, we're in the Berkshires, we have arts partners that are powerful, that are world-renowned. I would love to see us leverage that even more. We have colleges. We know we have colleges in our community. BCC down the road, Williams right here in town, MCLA just across Route 2. We should be, I hope we can find ways to better leverage giving our students opportunities using all of these partners. In addition, the district and schools will examine the value and appropriateness of a wider spread acceleration opportunities at our elementary school for students who would benefit from this. Do occasionally hear from parents whose students are very rightfully so ready for more, but our structures don't necessarily allow them to get that more through school. And parents are wonderful. They provide those opportunities for themselves, many of them, but some can't. And so we want to take a look at that too, and really wrap our heads around what does it mean to try to plan for an individual student so that they can really fly as fast and as high as they desire to and as they're able to. So we will be spending time documenting the actual opportunities that exist, and look at the opportunity gaps that and trying to quantify where there are opportunities, but we just for some reason or another aren't encouraging or allowing students to take advantage of them, and then figuring out how do we fill those gaps. And then lastly, I'm sorry, this is a typo. This should say information where my cursor is right now. Oh, I apologize. I need to back up, and I'm not quite sure how to do that when I'm in full screen. So I'll just do it the clunky, old-fashioned way. Apologies. Information. You remember when I talked about the graphic of building? Information is kind of the foundation that we're building all of these thoughts on. So, you know, the driving questions around information: how do we best listen to the members of the school community, including students, to gauge and measure the effectiveness of our work in the realm of belonging, diversity, equity, and inclusion? How do we best gather input from students and the families that we serve that love them and honor us by sending them to our public school? How do we gather input from them and from the teachers that dedicate their lives to helping these students learn and grow? How do we gather this data in ways that are powerful, meaningful, and that let us have better conversations among ourselves and with the larger community? And so really a lone objective here, you did hear Cindy talk about earlier, the move to get some tools to gather better formative data, you know, dipstick data about how kids are doing academically, how are they doing in reading, how are they doing in math. We need to do that same thing with social and emotional learning. We need to do that same thing with a sense of belonging, which I am still convinced is the kids that feel they belong in public schools tend to thrive. The kids that don't feel like they belong, I think there's a host of implications of that and a host of outcomes that could be better for that individual student if they don't feel like they're really at home here. And so we have to have a data tool that allows us to do regular checking with students and with teachers and with families, parents, caretakers, and guardians about how safe is their student feeling. To what level do the students feel we are responding to their needs? To what degree are students feeling like they really belong and have a place here? And so the district and building administration will begin looking and exploring programs and vendors that are out there who can provide the tools we want in the PD that we need to make sure that this is actually valuable and that it's actually used. Presentations will be made to the staff and very likely you to gather feedback on the ease of use and effectiveness of any data gathering tool that we're going to use. But I really think we need that data. We can't just depend on the parents who are willing to call or email or visit or that we run into at a soccer game or a cross-country meet or a volleyball game. We need to have regular check-ins in ways that are really quantifiable to answer the question, how are we doing in this SEL domain? And so we want to identify a tool in time for budget deliberations so that we can put the subscription, the PD, whatever we need into the budget and ready to roll for when we open school in September of 2022. And as you know, I could go on and on, but I think in the interest of time, we've shared kind of a big vision for how we need to be spending our time. Next month, I will be coming back with superintendent goals for my evaluation that you will see a lot of this showing up in, because this is what my experience, this is what my sense of our data, this is what many conversations. What you're seeing here tonight is where I believe we need to be, where I need to be spending our time as I lead this very special district in the two wonderful towns and the thousands of families that comprise this community. So with that, I'm sorry if I missed hands while I was presenting. I was not looking very hard. I apologize, but happy to take questions and concerns now. Julia?
Thank you. Thank you on many levels. Thank you for the detail of what you've been thinking about. thank you for the deep thoughtfulness around what our students very much need. And I can see how so many of our conversations are kind of tying up in this district improvement plan. I can so clearly hear or read and hear how you and your team have listened and are really getting that information from the district. And so first, I just want to say thank you. I also want to make a comment and a point of advocacy. The comment would be this over the timeline that this district plan covers and during a pandemic that you are leading through, this is an incredibly ambitious plan. And I guess my comment would be, I appreciate that. And I know, I feel like what you're naming are the most important things we need to focus on. And it's really ambitious. And it needs to be ambitious because that's what our students deserve. So my point of advocacy would be, is to really name the additional support you might need just to work through this plan. And I look at this and I say, so much of this, I love the measurements, I love the data. And so much of this, I'm thinking, well, who's managing all that data? Who's collecting all that data? How are we, and it's gonna be so important to have that data because that's how you know when you need to course correct. So who's in that? So for me, the point of advocacy might be, I hope you're thinking about some of the grant money, which it underlies all of these ambitions and all of this work, that some of that grant money might be used towards somebody who could support all the data work that's going to be necessary.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for all of that, Joy. And I as we're putting this plan together and then kind of had it where we wanted it and where I think we needed it, it's like, okay, this is really more like a 5 to 10 year, but I'm with you. I would much rather be overly ambitious and think about what supports do we need to reach that ambition. And maybe realistically, in a couple of crevices in my brain thinking, okay, we're not going to get all of this, but we're going to get a good bit of it if we stick with it. And we'll be learning about how to do what's next the entire time. So I appreciate that thought and you putting into words the who manages this. I was putting most of my energy into wishing that somebody would come up with some sort of, Lex Luthorian device to slow time down or stop time so we could, or make the pandemic go away instantly so we didn't need to manage that, or but thank you for that. That's a very helpful bit of feedback. Thank you. Carrie?
Thanks, Jake. Wow, I mean, there's a lot of really great stuff here. I agree with Julia about the ambition. But I also see a couple of pieces here that would make really terrific countywide initiatives. And I wonder if we have our pulse or you have your pulse on the county in terms of things like, for example, school start times and expanding student opportunities. Those are some things that should be discussed at the county level if they haven't already been. And if there are entities that would provide a venue for discussing those topics and others, it would be, I think, to our benefit to take advantage of that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Carrie. And I have a little bit of a notion of where that perspective comes from. And we are engaged with through Patrick Blackman, who is actually our representative to the online learning community that sort of falls under the Berkshire County Superintendent's Group. Yeah, and when some of you as individuals, as we've discussed, you know, that we have a student that wants to take this. Mount Everett has 3 students that want to take this. That I think requires maybe a countywide, maybe even a larger, with the school start times. I don't mean this, if this sounds snarky, I really don't mean it to. We have worked so many, I mean, this is my 17th year as a superintendent in Berkshire County. I had hair and it was black when I started, and we can't even get our calendars coordinated. So I think my thinking around school start time is some district needs to be a leader and take it on and actually do it. And then maybe there will, and I'm always happy to be the successful leader that does it the second time or the third time. I'm not necessarily wanting to be, the first into space, which seems to be the metaphor of the day, the first civilian in space. But this one seems like, and this one, what really drives the urgency around school start time for me is that it's our students that are talking about it. It's not like parents saying, "Oh man, I wish you could," or "I wish you would." It's like the closest level of our clients saying, "This would really be good for me." And
right, and it's actually it's the first time that I've heard it framed as not as flipping the start times, but as moving the start time for the 7 through 12, which is somehow more compelling, right?
Yeah. My experience is flipping it is easy, but thinking back to my days of trying to get like an 11-year-old and his 9-year-old brother and their 6-year-old sister ready for school in the morning to sometimes three different schools in Pittsfield at one point. It's no easier to get a little person ready and out the door in the morning than it is for a high school student to get up and get ready themselves. So I don't think our community will say, yeah, just flip it. I don't think we'll get that feedback. I think we'll get back, thank you for ruining my life. Now my teenager's happy, but you've made the rest of the family. So I think we need to think about it. Yeah, thank you for observing that it is not as simple as just flipping it. It's a very nuanced, complex challenge, but certainly not an impossible challenge because people do it and have done it successfully. And again, I think it may require a really deep thought about utilizing community partners that specialize in before and after school childcare, particularly for younger students. So we're not messing up the entire world and work world of families as we try to fix a problem for their adolescents and early adolescence. So, Jose.
Thanks, Jake. Now, as you described, corralling little people, tears were welling in my eyes. I think that's the story of my everyday. No, and the word ambition or ambitious was used by both Julia and Carrie, and clearly this is truly ambitious. The question I have, Jake, is I love your figure that has building, community wellness, opportunity, information stacked side by side, and then you've got activities and ways that you will assess how successful each of these activities have been. I think my concern is not the right word. I think it's I guess I'm curious about how you would prioritize these individual building blocks as you've laid out for us. Is the plan to approach achieving success in each of these activities for each of these building blocks? Is the plan to roll them out at the same time, or are these going to be layered in a certain way to give you the bandwidth that you would need to successfully carry out these activities and to build these building blocks?
Yeah,
what's the plan that
that's a crucial question, and it's one we're going to set our minds to as an administrative team. I will speak for myself, and I think I speak for the team. And I will say, part of the reason why this plan is so ambitious is because I believe in this team so much. I mean, this is a remarkable group of people that you all who were around when I got hired allowed me to come in and work with and have as colleagues and lead. To me, Jose, just very bluntly, the most crucial piece of this, the crisis level piece, is building community. It's, I think you're likely to agree. If you don't already agree, I think after October 19th and hearing about, our listening and learning project, you're likely to agree. I think we've already started attacking that piece. Attacking's a really poor choice. We've already started prioritizing and taking on that piece because it's about how individual people that we serve perceive themselves as human beings in relationship with the other people in the community that they've chosen to call home. So, I was, when you asked that question, I started thinking about like this. Yeah, I'm somebody that, for better or for worse, I've gone to church my entire life, and I put in enough hours in Sunday school as a kid to, if I ever get sentenced for some crime, I think I'm going to claim that I already did my Sunday school hours, so I should get my sentence reduced. I remember a song from when I was little. The wise man built his house upon the rock. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. To me, the rock that we have to build on is that community piece. If we start anywhere but there, we're building these structures on a foundation that, to some families, they're going to say, this is not the place for me. I'm not going to send my child to school there. This is not the place for me. I'm going to put my house on the market or pack up my apartment or my condo, and I'm going to leave. And that to me is, the other stuff we do is not nearly as meaningful or as important or as powerful if it's not done in the context and on that foundation of community. So that's my priority. The other stuff, some of it is stuff that we should be doing or we already do day in and day out. The school start time piece is pretty, I would rate that among the top of these priorities, because I think there's enough research to say we're not helping kids be as physically healthy, emotionally healthy, or socially healthy as they could be when we're not paying attention to the ways their brains work and the way their sleep patterns and their bodies actually work. So yeah, we can't take this all on at once. Julia's notion of having the right supports may lend a little more ability to take on several things at once as we're trying to get through and come out of the pandemic and dealing with day to day. Carrie's notion of, hey, maybe some of this is best done where we're part of a group, not the group, I think also lends some wisdom to how and what we take on and when, but we're very vigilant about that. And I know that when the admin team saw this document, and wrapped their heads around it all together in kind of one place, and I thought as I was writing it, like, oh my goodness, this is this is too much, but it is what we need to do.
Thank you, Jake. I just have a quick follow-up in terms of how the school committee or the role the school committee can play in this development plan. And it seems with Julia, Curtis, and I are nearing our 1-year anniversary of being in the school committee. I certainly have much to learn. Seems like the role that we can play is by helping to hold you and the administration accountable. So can we, as we move forward in, follow up or subsequent school committee meetings, can we expect from you some reporting, for instance, on how the objectives and activities are being rolled out, for instance, prioritizing community or the school start time, whatever that might look like?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I mean, next month when you see my goals, which is, for anybody that's not on a school committee, my goals are sort of one of the hearts of how I get evaluated in my role here in the district. I think you'll see my priorities in my goals, which are not going to be quite as ambitious because this is my livelihood and I don't want to get fired. I'm just kidding. You'll see my priorities and my goals, and then the school improvement plans informed this plan. This plan will in turn inform next year's school improvement plans. It will trickle down to individual educator plans and the plans that the administrators submit to me. I think it will probably show up in the school committee goals. The policy subcommittee has a role to play on this because some of this is about the policies that sort of guide and provide supports for how we actually operate and why we actually operate. So yes, I think you'll see regular sort of check-ins on much of this as we move forward together. And I think we're at the point, and I find it really exciting. We are at a point where all of these plans that we have to do from your level on down through the organizational chart actually all work together and complement each other and support each other. So that's where you move beyond, that's where we move beyond just ticking the boxes saying, okay, we adopted a plan, what's next? Now we're actually everybody's getting their oar in the water at the same time and following the orders of the person at the front of the boat. So we're going as fast and as far as we can.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it for me, Christina. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. We need to vote the district improvement plan. So I would like to make a motion to accept the district improvement plan as presented.
I'll second.
Was that Julia?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Bowen, aye.
Conry, aye.
Constantine, aye.
Elfenbein, aye.
Green eye.
Miller, aye.
Thank you. That motion passes. Thank you, Jake, for that presentation. You only went like 35 minutes over your allotted time. So now I have 0 minutes for the chair report. So next up on the agenda is the chair report. I just wanted to briefly talk about the workshop that the school committee had on August 28th with Dorothy Presser. The notes are in our packet. I'm not going to sort of rehash that, but I did want to thank Dorothy for driving out to Mount Greylock and meeting us on a Saturday and spending a good amount of time with us on a Saturday morning. And I wanted to thank Jake and Stacy for helping with scheduling and setting that all up. And I wanted to thank the committee for taking time away from their families for us to really dig deep into our processes and the things that we need to do to help continue to improve the district. So thank you all for doing that. We had some action items out of that workshop. Jake has just presented the district improvement plan, and in November he will be presenting superintendent goals, and we are working as a committee on looking at our school committee goals, and that we'll be working on that soon. I don't think we have a set date on that yet. Any questions there? Did I miss anything? Okay, the next agenda item that I had was discussing the November reorganization process. I was kind of hoping Ursula would be here because I think she wasn't around for the last reorganization process. It's something that we have to do per our policy, is to do reorganization in November. It's a little weird and a little clunky. The way we did it last year, I called the meeting to order. I was still chair, and I read our mission statement, and then I turned the meeting over to Jake, and Jake becomes all powerful, as he pointed out at that point. And he calls for nominations for the chair. So the reason why I mention this is to sort of like talk about that process a little bit and really just remind you that that's how it happens, so it's not as weird. And to really think about, we have up on our website our current committee list and the subcommittees that we are a part of. And so I think it's important for all of us to think about this before our next regular session meeting, where we're sitting in our subcommittees, the time commitment involved in those subcommittees, and if we're comfortable in those places. Because, you know, as we move around and change places, there are things that we might have different interests in, or we might not be able to commit as much time to one thing. So just, I just wanted you all to take some time to think about that. Currently, our subcommittee composition, we have 3 subcommittees: negotiation, finance, and policy. Steve Miller has requested an education subcommittee, and I think that's a discussion we should have. We've had the discussion about an education subcommittee in the past. My recollection is that we as a school committee as a whole, our whole purpose is education. And not, I don't know the best way to describe it, but we as a committee as a whole are always taking into account education. I'm not sure there's a need for an education subcommittee meeting, but that's up for discussion. Julia?
Is that up for discussion right now? I have just, or is that November?
No, I think it's valuable to have that discussion now before November, because whoever becomes chair, if we decide that an education subcommittee is needed, people will have to be elected to or asked to be on that subcommittee.
So what I've seen in many other educational boards is something akin to a program committee, or almost like I've been in places where it's been called an accountability committee, not in more in the like, how are we doing against what we said we were going to do in course corrections, talking about course corrections. And I'm just thinking about that fantastic plan, district improvement plan, and thinking, a committee that is looking at some of that and I think it'd be super important that is the agendas and the conversation are driven by the school, lest we confuse the line between governance and management. But I think that I've seen that done a lot and quite effectively.
Steve?
So the reason I brought this up is not to say that the creation of an education subcommittee is to take the focus off the school committee. We are here for education. It's because we are so busy with putting out fires. Right now, this is what 3.5 hours into this meeting, that I think it is very useful to have a subset. And I'm happy with the phrasing Julia used, that's explicitly tasked to be point to help facilitate some of these conversations. And I think facilitate is the right word. And we did have one before during the initial phases of the COVID pandemic, when we were trying to plan for what would happen. It was a useful place for the district administration, for the teachers, for the parents, and for the school committee to get together and meet. There's a lot of wonderful things in these district improvement plans. There's a lot of really good discussions to have. By having a committee, this does open up some of these discussions to public comment and feedback. And I think we have a lot of people in this community who care very deeply about these issues and would be interested in finding ways to be involved. So thank you.
One thing I do want to point out about subcommittees is the amount of time it takes for the administration to plan for meetings, which is something I think we always have to consider. The more subcommittees we have, the more we're taking the administration away from, their day-to-day tasks. So just something to keep in mind. Carrie?
So it seems to me that the education subcommittee is really the school governance council, which is made up of, the way Steve is envisioning it, is made up of parents, teachers, community members, and they're elected to represent the community and to support and work with the building principals on matters of curriculum and education. The way the education subcommittee was run before, it was more of a community forum. And I don't think that's something that the school committee signed on to. It's not the way we run subcommittees. I think if the proposal were to include sort of open forum, we would need to decide as a committee that that's the way we would want to run it, or would want it run. And maybe, so I think it's more complicated than just, do we want an education subcommittee? I would want to see a proposal of what is that committee really intending to do, and how is it going to be run, and have the committee agree that that is a valuable exercise.
Mm-hmm. Julia?
Thank you, Carrie. And I agree with that. Also having served on the school council and seeing a lot of our work from school council reflected in that district improvement plan. I think you're right, Carrie. That's where a lot of that conversation should be happening. And it made me wonder at our retreat, where are we monitoring? Do we have a subcommittee that kind of monitors progress, works with the superintendent on checkpoints throughout the year to see if we're on track to meet, he's on track to meet his goals, like a part of the evaluation cycle? Where does that happen? And to me, this is all part and parcel of it. Like, it's that accountability around the most important goals that we have as a district and for our superintendent. And again, not for broad conversation, but just as a place to be checking in and talking about course corrections if we're off track.
So there was at one point an evaluation subcommittee, and I think that was kind of the purpose of it, as I remember. Does that ring a bell with you, Christina? You're nodding your head. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, although I like the idea of accountability versus evaluation.
Yeah. So would it make sense? Sorry, I was just going to suggest, would it make sense for someone to draw up a proposal for this subcommittee that we're talking about and present it at the next school committee meeting?
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Julia's chomping at the bit there.
I am going to say, having seen something of this sort, I am willing to take, steps towards drafting something, but I would love, if possible, Christina, to run that past you, to work with you on that, and certainly to work with Jake as well.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
The next, so as I mentioned earlier, we currently don't have any liaisons within the school committee. Another item that Steve Miller had requested was a liaison to the PAC, and I will let him explain that request rather than put words in his mouth.
Sure, thank you. So in the past, we've had a liaison with the PAC, and I think it's also been valuable to help keep the lines of communication open, to also show the priorities of the school committee, to just keep us in the loop and be aware of what's going on. And given all the educational issues that are going on, I think it would be valuable to have that again, and I would be very, very happy to be a point person, to attend their meetings and to report back to the school committee.
Carrie?
Isn't the director of special education our liaison to the PAC? Isn't that the, I'm not actually sure. I mean, I don't remember the school committee ever having a liaison to the PAC.
I know there was one at West. And again, this is one of the things when we merged the 3 different school committees, different committees had different items in place. But we used to have, I think, liaisons to the different, like what was it?
We had one to the C Fund.
I was going to say this. I was trying to remember the name, the C Fund, and then there was one at.
We had one to the, there was like a nurses committee at one point. I forget the name of it, but
Right.
there have been liaisons. I don't recall there ever having been one at Greylock for the PAC.
I might ask what problem we're trying to solve.
I would just say keeping the lines of communication open, and just there were a couple of advisories from the PAC last year, and I think it would be valuable to have more, maybe more formal, more frequent communication with them. These are very important issues, and I think it would be beneficial to have someone from the school committee attending the meetings.
Sorry, it seemed to me that the director of special education services could report back from those PAC meetings. I wonder if there's any kind of conflict with a school committee member being in attendance of a PAC meeting because of what they're discussing, what they're potentially discussing about individual students that we wouldn't necessarily want to be involved in.
I mean, I'm happy to modify this to say that we make the offer to the PAC and just ask the PAC, would you like someone from the school committee to serve as a liaison? And if they say that they would like someone, then we appoint someone, but give them the choice.
Carrie?
Does the PAC ever come to the school committee to discuss issues? I mean, I would kind of rather see it done that way. The PAC should have an open invitation to the school committee to come and present any kind of, but maybe that's, again, maybe that is typically done through the special education director, who is the administrative liaison to the PAC. So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of there's a lot of regulation around this, and I don't feel like I know enough to know what's appropriate.
Steve?
So I don't see it as an either or. I don't see having a liaison prohibits the PAC. I would be fine tonight with just investigating with legal and just investigating with the PAC to see if they want someone. And then you'll leave this to a future meeting.
And is that something that that Patrick would bring to the next PAC meeting, Jake? I don't really know how that works.
He certainly could. I think they met a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. So it'll be, I think he said early November will be their next meeting.
I might suggest that we first speak to legal and or maybe the Mass Association of School Committees to understand how those open lines of communications are managed. Just because if we say, do you want us to come? And they say yes, and then we say, oh, we're not going to. And that just feels like we're going in the wrong direction. So I think we should just really understand those things before we talk to the PAC.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, Christina, I don't believe there's school committee liaisons to the school councils. I don't believe our PAC is an organization or as individuals that comprise the organization are shy about reaching out to any of you, me, Patrick. I would sort of circle back to Julia's initial thought of what problem is trying to be, what are we trying to solve? We don't have liaisons to the school councils. I think in some ways, I don't know. I have to wrap my head around this a little bit. And I think starting with legal and with MASC is a good advice on where to start to begin that wrapping process.
And Jake, just so you know, there did actually used to be a liaison to the school council at Mount Greylock.
Oh,
but I think it was dropped at some point.
Steve, is your hand up? Sorry.
Yeah, the lighting is bad. Sorry. I'm trying to remember, and Joe hopefully can help on this, that when we were talking about regionalizing, in the old days when you had a school district of just one building, to some extent, the school council and the school committee had a tremendous overlap. But now that you have a school committee that has 3 buildings, that made the school councils more important. And I think that separated things out a bit. Whereas we don't have 3 different PACs, we have one PAC for the whole district.
The state's advisories and what I recall from people advocating for as best practices is for you to have a strong special education parent advisory council, 3 strong school councils. They all advocate through the channels that they have, as well as have official ways to communicate, submitting letters and recommendations, and they have formal review responsibilities for various things, formal things that they're required to produce. Having them be strong entities in and of themselves, as opposed to governing through or working through liaisons, is probably the best, strongest, most resilient organization to foster. And so I think those advisories in that direction is, to me, that's the best route to go. But if there are specific problems or specific pitfalls that we're trying to address, then I think that's the only thing that would change that perspective, I think.
Okay, so we're going to look into things a little bit further there. So I think we can move on to our next agenda item, unless anyone else has any questions there. Okay, so up next on the agenda are the MASC resolutions delegate guidance. We need to vote on the resolutions, vote on whether or not we're going to support the resolutions as provided. So we can direct our delegate who will represent us, which is Carrie, when these move forward. I'm wondering if, obviously you've all read the resolutions, but what I could do, if you liked, is read just the title of each resolution so that we have that on the record. And then if somebody wants to, I don't know if somebody has a motion that they want to provide to support or not support the resolutions. If we feel we need to pull them all out and do it one at a time, we can, or we can support them all together. Does that make sense? Should I read the resolutions, the titles? Or not?
I think it's worth stating it for the record.
Okay. So resolution number 1 is dedicated funding for school-based clinics and services. Resolution 2 is homework gap and Wi-Fi/internet access. Resolution 3 is IDEA Full Funding Act. Resolution 4 is recess. Resolution 5 is zero tolerance policies. Resolution 6 is alternative to MCAS. Resolution 7 is school committees and receiverships. Resolution 8 is electric school buses. Resolution 9 is prohibiting the use of Native American mascots. Julia.
I was just going to ask if I could, maybe to start the discussion, move that we accept all of the resolutions.
Okay, Julia moves the exception of all resolutions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Curtis seconds. Discussion.
I would just point out, for anybody who doesn't have them in front of them, some of these are sponsored by particular school districts. Some of them are by the Massachusetts Association School Committee Board of Directors. It is, actually, most of them are from the Board of Director. I think maybe just 1 or 2 are from a particular school district. It is open to any school district in the state to propose resolutions. So if in the future the Mount Greylock Regional School District has a resolution they would like to propose at the state level, we are welcome to do so.
Thank you, Carrie. Any other discussion, questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Bowen, aye.
Conry, aye.
Constantine, aye.
Elfenbein, aye.
Green, aye.
Miller, aye.
Thank you, that motion passes. Okay, up next, upcoming meetings, and Jose, I'm gonna ping you for one quick second because I think there's an incorrect time on the policy subcommittee meeting, but October 19th, 2021, 6 p.m. Jake already plugged this special session with Courtney Tunis. October 21st at 4 p.m. there's a finance subcommittee meeting. October 26th at
7 p.m.
7 p.m. 5 p.m. is incorrect. There's a policy subcommittee meeting. And October 28th at 6:30 p.m. we have the Dr. Josie workshop. And I think that's it for meetings. And right, there's nothing else. That's what we have so far. Any agenda requests? And I do not have any other items for discussion. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Christina, actually,
Yes.
sorry
No
for
problem.
that. An agenda request, you mentioned it, but we do need to talk about at some point what we want to do for school committee goal setting. and our self-evaluation.
Yep.
So I would just put that, if we can find a time to put that discussion about it and maybe even talk about a date, that would be great.
Great. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, back to Curtis's motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Steve seconds.
He supported me earlier.
All in favor?
Owen, I.
Conry, aye.
Constantine, I.
Elfenbein eye.
Green, aye.
Miller, aye.
Okay, it is 9:48 p.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for your time.
Go Sox.
Have a great night.